for the Masters Historic Festival 2021, and this will be the 16th running of the Masters Historic Festival. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Christopher Tate live at Brands Hatch and accompanied by Andrew Marriott, journalist, reporter in the pit lane in Formula One in the 70s in period. Andrew, we're looking forward to having a good afternoon's racing.
Thanks very much, Christopher. Not dressed in period, I have to say. I'm really looking forward to this. So wonderful to see fans back at Brands Hatch. First time we've seen them for, obviously 18 months or so. At that, I say that, last year the Masters Festival was able to take place behind closed doors here. And as we say, a long history of this particular event. Terrific historic racing coming up. Some delay this morning, Chris, right at the end of practice, the last session, just minutes before the end, an accident which has caused some damage to a barrier, and the subsequent knock-on of that means that we are starting late. We're expecting to start with a Masters single-seater demo, so some very interesting Formula One cars and other single-seaters going to demonstrate, we think. And we are a bit fluid at the moment, Chris, because we're not sure with this delay exactly what's going to happen. Then we're going to have the first of the two this weekend's Masters Historic Formula One races, some really tasty machinery in that, and we are celebrating Tyrrell this weekend. Of course, it's some 50 years since Tyrrell won their World Championship. Then we're going to have the Equipe Libre, which is basically for road-going sports cars, MGBs and Austin Healers, that sort of thing. Then we're going to have another race that I really love, the Masters Endurance Legends, and these are the legends of Le Mans and WEC and American Le Mans Series. And then we're going to round off today with the Masters Pre-66 touring cars. And I have to tell you, one of the great names of touring car racing, Steve Soper, ex-factory BMW, has put it on the pole in a Mustang. So that's something to look forward to later. At the moment, we've got an empty track, of course. We're looking forward to cars coming out soon. And then maybe, Chris, you should take us a bit through Sunday. We've got more races on Sunday. We've got a very busy programme then.
Yes, this has always been a two-day event, if possible, and there was some testing here yesterday on the short circuit. But after today's races, which you've just previewed, Andrew, then tomorrow morning early there is the 90 minutes gentleman drivers race. Now that race, the whole of Sunday, has been sold out in advance. So Brands Hatch and MSV do ask us to say that there are no further tickets available due to the current limitations and government regulations. Tomorrow's event is sold out. So you'll be enjoying that. We'll continue to cover the whole event for everything right through this afternoon until the close of play and right through tomorrow. But tomorrow morning starts with the gentleman drivers. We also have some later, more modern Formula One cars in a demonstration. A great race over 30 minutes for a Pre-66 Minis with a busy grid for that, which should be great fun on the Grand Prix circuit.
Enthusiasts there on the bank and just seeing the trees fully in leaf now. It's amazing how spring suddenly burst, doesn't it? And everything turns green. This 2.65-mile circuit here in Kent hosted British Grand Prix in the past and many other great events, and of course now run by the former Formula One driver Jonathan Palmer, who's hugely enthusiastic, and of course in period was a Formula One driver with Tyrrell, so there's a special synergy there.
Yes, having started with Williams and was indeed with Tyrrell, and the building we're looking at in the background is the head office of the Motorsport Vision Group, which controls also Alton Park and Snetterton and Cadwell Park and Donington Park, as well as the Bedford Autodrome. So there's a very busy schedule. Brands Hatch looking wonderful in what is now, are we allowed to call it, do you think, the early summer sunshine? Maybe after the spring we've had in Britain this year. So wherever you are around the world, tuning into the Masters Historic Festival from Brands Hatch, we can actually show you a reasonably blue sky and what looks like a little bit of bright light. A fantastic track, of course, Brands Hatch, extended to become a Grand Prix length 2.65 miles back in 1962, Andrew.
Yes.
And ran the British Grand Prix alternating with other circuits through the 60s and 70s and into the 80s before it finally went to Silverstone. But it's still very correct to call this the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. It's not used every racing weekend, far from it. It's quite rationed as to its use. but this does make for a proper recreation of racing from the 60s, 70s and 80s.
We're just looking into the garages there and actually seeing the 2-litre sports car come by. I think it probably just got abandoned in the pits and is coming back. You see some of the cars there just poking out there. The MG 675 Formula Sports car that raced at Le Mans, and cars being pushed back at the moment, and that's a Formula 5000 car. And, tomorrow we're going to bring you an interview with a guy who's running that particular machine in the colours of Chuck Jones Racing, and Chuck was a Californian who I knew extremely well, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on air, but my first daughter was conceived in a waterbed at his wonderful home in Tustin, California, and Chuck was a great mate of mine.
Right, well, it's I think they're probably because of the need to reschedule everything today, Andrew, following this hold-up we were talking about after an accident in the sports car qualifying, which was a bit of a nasty shunt and has meant some barrier repairs, hence the hold-up. So there was going to be a run by some of the demonstration cars, which we think is now probably not going to happen, we understand from race control. We're going to go straight to the Formula One race, and the Formula One cars will be warmed up and lined up very soon, and that race is going to be shortened to 20 minutes. Normally runs for 25 minutes. Of course, this year, because of COVID and all the restrictions on travel and everything else, the FIA and the Masters organisation have agreed that it is not a FIA championship this year.
But it's still a championship.
But it's still an important championship. And, of course, there has been inevitably a knock-on effect in the entries that were due to come to this meeting from Europe and the United States, which has simply not been able to happen. But last weekend, Masters, in the ever-expanding way of historic racing, was running a race for historic Formula One cars in Laguna Seca, California, for a round of the American Masters Series, which is going very well, and they had a wonderful race meeting at Laguna Seca, one of my favourite tracks anywhere in the world.
The corkscrew. Now, we did see that Lola T, that Formula 5000 Lola, and I actually went to Laguna Seca when that car was being tested for the first time by Al Unser Jr. No, Al Unser Sr. it was. Well, and I went with Chuck Jones, and that was a memorable time. It was the first time I've been to Laguna. Obviously, I've been back since. Now, this race coming up, we've just got the 10 starters. The favourite is a guy called Steve Hartley.
Well, yeah, in fact, we have 12 cars qualified.
12, yeah.
12 indeed. And Steve Hartley is on pole. And I think we also have the opportunity to run a couple of interviews which we were able to get with them earlier on, during and before qualifying this morning. So we look forward to running that. And the first one out, I think, is indeed our man on pole.
Yeah. Well, look at this. 4 wheels at the front of the famous Tyrrell P34. Jonathan Holtzman is the owner from America, and this is a car he fell in love with, I think, when he was a youngster.
Well, absolutely. I mean, how could you not fall in love with the only Formula One car that had 6 wheels that won a race?
Well, absolutely, and I was there actually to see that at Anderstor. Jonathan, you tried to buy one of the originals, I think 6 cars that were built, and you couldn't do that, so you had to get Colin Bennett and his team to build you one.
Well, you know, we go back and forth on the exact story. So the only ones that were available to buy were 77s. 76s, unfortunately, are in museums. And I looked at the historic Masters racing, and I said, we need to have this car, you know, in the event. And I have an 80s Lotus. I have an important Ferrari that invented the 6-wheel paddle. So I said, what's the iconic 76 car? Well, Lauda's Ferrari, Hunt's McLaren, or Jody Scheckter or DePoyet's 6-wheel. And I said, I want to get the 6-wheel. So we said, how do we do this? So Colin Bennett and his 2 sons, Alistair and Jay, said, let's build one. And I said, okay, but then they went on to say, let's build 2 and sell one. I said, okay.
Now, if I remember, there was windows in the cockpit so you could see what the 4 wheels were doing, because braking was a bit of a problem. One of the front wheels would lock up and the one behind wouldn't.
Well, actually, there's a great motorsport cartoon of Jody Scheckter complaining about at the Swedish Grand Prix that the car wasn't handling right because one of the wheels fell off. So the window, my understanding, was added so you could see that all 4 wheels were on.
That's a great story. Obviously, you haven't driven it that much, but you're getting used to it.
Yeah. So last year, because of the pandemic, we still were able to test at Pembrey, very competitive with my partner in the transaction, James Hansen from Speedmaster. We then came here and we finished 3rd in the first race, and we set the fastest lap in class.
So pretty happy and hoping for even better things this weekend.
Absolutely. I'm an American. We like to win.
Lovely. Thank you.
So a Marlboro McLaren M23, beautifully prepared by Hall & Hall. And this is the owner and driver, Lucas Salusa. And Lucas, welcome to Brands Hatch. And you've raced here before in this lovely car, or just tested?
Yeah, I've raced here before. Actually, I drove the car for the first time on this circuit in September, and it was also the first time I'd been on the circuit. So there's a lot of learning in that weekend, but it's an amazing car, an amazing track, so I'm excited to do it again.
Now, Lucas, you had a pretty remarkable Monaco historique recently, also in the month of May. Was that as much fun as it looked as we saw on television?
I can't put into words how much fun it was. And I mean, what was actually very special to me was that I met Jochen Maas there, who's, of course, the driver of the car in period. And we had a conversation, and he was like, yeah, I remember the 1977 race. I came 4th in it. And then that was a bit before the race, and after the race, I managed to come 4th as well. And then we met again and realized it was also exactly 44 years before. So there's something beauty in the numbers there, that it's such a special thing to be able to drive the car around Monaco and then still be able to talk to the driver who actually drove the car in period. It was amazing.
Well, yeah, lots of people forget that Jochen Maas was indeed number 2 and then maybe number 1 jointly on the McLaren team in period, because people always think of Jochen as a sports car driver and winner of World Championships. But he drove this car. The history since, how long is it since you acquired the car?
We acquired it, I think it was about Christmas 2019. We've had it about a year, maybe a bit less. So it hasn't been a long time. And I'm not sure exactly what it had done between Jochen driving it in 1977 and now.
Well, it's great to see the car here, and you're going to be quite a busy man this afternoon and tomorrow, I think. You've got another car to drive. Tell us about the Ferrari.
Yeah, so I'm driving exactly the Ferrari Bread Van 250 GT, which is, I mean, my absolute favorite car. It's beautiful, has an amazing history, and of course is unique. So I'm driving it for the first time in a couple of years. It's been sort of dormant for a while, but it's like a fish in water. At the moment I get in the car, I feel at home.
How do you fancy your chances in the beautiful Ferrari Bread Van against a lot of Cobras and E-Types? It's quite strong competition in that race, isn't it?
Yeah, of course there's amazing drivers as well as very fast cars. And with the Ferrari's got a 3-litre engine, which against the bigger engines is not necessarily easy to win, but it handles amazingly and it's very consistent.
Well, good luck, Lucas. We're cut off by the P34.
Steve Hartley with the wonderful McLaren MP41 here, ex-John Watson car. Steve, you've been racing this for a couple of years, and you're definitely going to be one of the front runners. You're going to be up near the sharp end of the business, aren't you?
Well, let's hope so, yeah. It's a great car, fantastic car. I bought it, obviously, a few years ago. We've been setting it up ever since, and it's just fantastic to drive. It's probably twice as good as the Arrows, and particularly around here, it's an easy car to drive. It's easy on the tyres, and it is a pleasure. It's great around the back end because of the downforce, and it's just, what can I say? It's a McLaren. It's a championship winning car, and you couldn't ask for anything else, could you?
Now this is a car that John Watson won in Detroit, a marvellous victory from the Irishman. But looks just the way it did in those days.
It should do as well. Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of help from the factory, and they've given us some. There's a lot of history about the car, so it's easy to get the technical information to set the car up. But I have a guy called Nigel Rees who engineers the car. He's fantastic. Really knows what he's doing. And apart from the car looking right, it goes right, and that's what's important.
What about Brands Hatch itself? I mean, a hugely challenging circuit here on the Grand Prix layout.
It's one of my favourites. Every time I come to Brands, you predict something, and generally the opposite happens. And I've had some fantastic races here, and that's why I like coming back.
You've had huge success in the Masters over the years, of course, mainly with Arrows before you got this particular McLaren. You've got to carry on for a few years more?
Yeah, as long as I can, actually. Yeah. Age might catch up one day.
Where's the opposition going to come from this weekend?
Don't really know. I don't really know. I haven't really studied the grid.
Six-wheel Tyrrell?
Could be. Hey, yeah, could be. Yeah, they were quick, those, in the day, really fast. I remember at Monza, Martin Stretton, you know, it was really quick because of the drag factor on it, but who knows.
See what happens. Great to talk to you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Steve Hartley, as modest as ever, but he's been enormously successful in that car over the last couple of years in Masters all around Europe, and he is indeed on pole, Andrew,
I did it.
from Warren Briggs in
5 seconds,
another
okay.
McLaren. And we are hearing
Okay,
that
I
we
think I
should
did
be
it at
able to get
-2.
some motor racing underway quite soon. So let's talk about the grid.
Yeah, indeed, and as you said,
come
Hartley
to one
on
next.
the pole and Warren Briggs alongside
Oh, I
him,
can hear
so
myself
all
in my
McLaren
ear.
front row. But the man we spoke to earlier, Lucas Salusa,
checking again?
Austrian,
No, still.
there is in third place. So
I can.
it's another
Coming to
McLaren.
one.
And then we've got
Mixing one.
after that,
Mark Harrison
Mark
in the
Harrison,
Arrows.
he's going really well in that. But just an interesting aside with
On one
Salusa,
now.
his first ever motorsport event was in a Bugatti at a VSCC Prescott hill climber. What a way to start. You go from that to racing a Formula One car. It's extraordinary. Obviously, a big family of motor racing aficionados with the father. And a number of sons. I think there's 4 sons, 2 or 3 of them certainly race, and we'll be interested to see how he's going, because he's just coming to terms with that car. I think now we're seeing them coming onto the warm-up lap. Yes, 3 McLarens at the front, and we've got a Theodore, we've got a Benetton, I think. We've got the Tyrrell in the Benetton colours.
Tyrrell in Benetton colours, yes, indeed.
Benetton sponsoring Tyrrell before they had their own team, and
Surtees is 2 Surtees, which is nice to see. That's Mark Davis's TS16 and Chris Perkins's TS14.
Yeah.
That is Hartley there we're looking at making his way out of the pit lane. Yes, 12 cars, but enough to make lots of noise
Chris,
and lots of excitement.
I find it very difficult. This happened 40 years ago. I was there. It seems like a flash, really. And and seeing these cars race here, mostly, of course, in this particular race with the Cosworth DFV engines. I think all with the Cosworth DFV engines. Most prepared by Jeff Richardson, who we were talking to earlier in the paddock, who apparently has just bought the rights to make further DFV engines now, and has bought all the patterns for the blocks. Of course, we had a very good historic Formula One race at Monaco a few weeks ago when I was commentating there, and the big incident with Alesi and Marco Werner, the 3 times Le Mans winner.
Yes.
Werner hitting Alesi up the back when he either missed a gear or maybe changed up early. That race won by Michael Lyons, who is here this weekend engineering another car, but not actually racing. But he has won a lot of these races in the past.
But I do know that Marco Werner and that very nice Lotus 77 were down to be here at Brands Hatch this weekend. But I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, as is the way, unfortunately, in these COVID times, travel being difficult, 5 cars were due to come from Germany for this weekend, and none of them been able to do so since Germany came onto the red list, or Britain was put on the red list by Germany. Whichever way around it was, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that we have some wonderful DFV engine Formula One cars here to look at. Ian Simmons there in the Benetton sponsored Tyrrell as it was at the time. And we're further down the grid then, so Ian Simmons is the beginning of row 3 alongside Mark Hazel.
Mark Hazel, been around racing for years and years. I think he's in the trucking industry. I think he was in one of the very early truck races I ran, Mark Hazel, maybe several of them. And then, of course, the fascinating story of a man called Ken Tyrrell.
Yes.
Now, it's not the Ken Tyrrell, he's a namesake, and we did interview him, Chris, and we'll be hearing from him tomorrow. But that's a fascinating story. And then going through Neil Glover, I think, is next. And then Philip Hall, who was a late entry. Mark Davis, you mentioned. And then bringing up the back is Jonathan Holtzman, still obviously coming to terms in that 6-wheel Tyrrell.
We're looking here at Warren Briggs, the New Zealander, himself an engineer, originally a race engineer, a factory engineer, I should say, with McLaren in the early days of McLaren. Very typically staffed as the factory was back then at Colnbrook, pretty much exclusively by Kiwis. But Warren then has gone on, stayed in Britain and built himself his own successful engineering business up in the East Midlands, and decided he was going to go racing again more recently. His car run by 9W out of Stockbridge in Hampshire, and now we're beginning to see a nice grid taking shape. A little bit further back in 1, 2, 3, 4th row is Neil Glover in the arrows, in the correct Ragno ceramic-y. Lots of Italian tile manufacturers and ceramic manufacturers were sponsors in the period.
Which and they were all based around Imola as well.
And they were very keen sponsors. And on the row behind is Philip Hall. And Philip Hall is in the extremely rare Theodore TR1. In fact, I think I'm right in saying that's the only Theodore that still continues.
I think it started off as an Ensign, that particular car. It was raced by Keke Rosberg, we do know that. There is an interesting, another chap we spoke to this morning, Chris, who will bring you the interview tomorrow there, in that lovely Shadow DN9, the only DN9 that Don Nichols' company built. And I would recommend the Pete Lyons book about the Shadow organisation. It's a
Shadow Cars.
Yeah, Pete's book won the RAC Motoring Book of the Year award last year.
And so we have the then in the further back down the grid behind the arrows there we see now Mark Hazel's elegant Williams FW08, and that is a similar car to the one in which Rosberg won the World Championship that year.
I think we can look at the grid, look.
There we are.
But that's not.
No, that's not the grid.
That's a grid for another race.
That's the grid for another race. So we will focus on telling you what we have further back. Then Mark Davis in behind the Mark Hazel Williams is Neil Glover's Arrows in the Ragno colours we were just talking about. And just hidden behind him is another car that's a pleasure to see. Mark Davis did manage to get over from Belgium in the FINA-sponsored Surtees TS16. Those cars built at Edenbridge in
Kent, down the road,
not far away from Brands Hatch at all. And behind him is another Surtees, that being Chris Perkins in the TS14, and there, as the camera swings around, but there in the denim-sponsored Tyrrell is Ken Tyrrell.
Ken Tyrrell.
And he is an American, enjoying coming over here. That car has been acquired from a long-term British owner who didn't race it very much, if at all, very rarely, and it's been completely rebuilt by Liaz Ducara's wonderful Zool racing team. Up in Derby. He's done a fantastic job on that, and it really is looking immaculate, and that's very much a sort of trial outing, if you like, for Ken Tyrrell.
Yeah, there at the back you see the famous P34 6-wheel Tyrrell. Of course, one of that it's a recreation built by Colin Bennett's organisation, well, mainly by his sons actually, and the original cars, I went to the launch of that, and it was at a Ford showroom in Regent Street, and it was
a rolling lap, and Masters does a rolling start too.
The car had a dust sheet over it, and they'd made a fillet of wood between the two front wheels, so it just looked like another 4-wheel car, and no one had an idea. How they kept it secret, I don't know. Think of Goodyear made the tyres and that, it didn't leak from them, and they pulled the dust sheet off it, and I suppose there was about 50 of us there. And there was just total silence for about 10 seconds, and everybody broke into applause. They couldn't believe it, and will it work? And of course, it did work pretty well. One of the big problems they had was getting all 4 front wheels to lock up under hard braking at the same time.
Yeah.
And they built a little window so you could see, but talking to the owner, he reckoned the window was built because sometimes the wheels fell off and you wanted to see whether you got 3 or 4, because you've still got 3 front wheels, you could still steer, you see.
Yeah, and you couldn't really see. It was a remarkable thing. It made his debut, did it not? His debut win was at Anderstorp in Sweden.
Right. Yeah, I was there for that day. Designed by the wonderful man called Derek Gardner, who designed most of the successful Tyrrells. It's just interesting, isn't it, as they just go around on this lap, to contemplate. Tyrrell sold the business to British American Racing, Craig Pollock and Villeneuve and that deal. That then became Honda.
Yes.
Honda pulled out, Braun bought it, became Braun, won the World Championship with Jenson Button. Then they sold it to Mercedes. So there's that timeline of going all the way to the current top
and
team.
Still all on the same site of Brackley, which was originally the home of Reynard Cars, as opposed to the famous woodshed in Surrey, where the Tyrrells were being built in period.
The woodyard there, and of course Ken Tyrrell, his nickname was Chopper.
His nickname was Chopper. Isn't that a fine sight? 3 of the red and white Marlborough sponsored as they were in period, and we're allowed to say that now, as the cars begin to form up into the 2x2 grid formation, and they will do a rolling start in Masters, and that will take them excitingly into Paddock Hill Bend.
Chris, you mentioned the Marlborough sponsorship. Of course, in period, they would have run with that blanked out.
Yeah.
They would have had strobe stripes instead.
On the later cars, once the legislation came into place.
Absolutely.
So here we are now then, with Hartley leading us round, with Warren Briggs alongside him, Lucas Salusa in the McLaren M23 behind, and Mark Harrison in the black arrows. Now just stand by as we're coming up to the line and waiting for the lights to go green, and away we go, and we expect to see Steve Hartley lead into the first corner. We want everyone to get safely round and away down.
Yeah, still one of the most daunting corners in motor racing. Paddock Hill Bend, diving down and then up to Druids, hard on the brakes. Turning round here, remember these guys aren't using paddle shifts, they're changing gear with their hand, and they're actually pushing the clutch in as well.
And remember also that the tyres are as warm as they've managed to make them on their warm-up lap, rather than as warm as they've been heated up in a blanket in the pit lane.
We got Briggs in the lead, but he's going to lose it right now. And side by side, the 2 McLarens, the early going of this Formula One race here, and well, Briggs made a super start, but Hartley just trying to dive down the inside there. Well, was that the battle for second?
No, that was Salusa trying to have a go.
That was the battle for second. Yeah, Hartley has pulled out into the lead. Just misreading that, sorry folks. And there the Theodore.
Very nice by Phil Hall there, just diving up the inside, making a couple of places there. Isn't that a fine sight?
Yeah.
Those wings, DFV engines, Hewland gearbox.
Yeah.
And there you have your standard Formula One car from the 1970s and early 80s. The Shadow leading the Tyrrell there. Ian Simmons doing well. Can't quite see where Mark Hazel's gone in the FW08 Williams.
I think he's in 6th place on the timing screen. We'll have to check that out. But yes, Hartley getting away well. And then Briggs and Salusa duking in and out for their 2nd place there.
Hartley has got himself a proper lead.
Just under 131.096. 38.289 as final sector. And Hartley, we expected to see this, as we said, some of the opposition he usually faces not here today because of COVID.
But I tell you what, Philip Hall in the Theodore going very nicely, and they're queuing up behind Mark Harrison there in the black Shadow, looking for a way past there, looking at the inside, and he will again, I'm sure, here going into Surtees, as that turns them away out onto the Grand Prix course and away on the long legs down. It is a great circuit, down through Pilgrim's Drop, out to Hawthorns, round to Westfield.
Well, Hartley pulling away 4 seconds on that first lap.
And it does look as though, yes, he's done it. And so Mark Harrison drops back, and Philip Hall has come up from the 2nd row at the back there of the grid. The Williams also diving down the inside. Harrison lost a lot of places on that lap, and Hall is now free and liberated. he's got to catch the two other McLarens, the two earlier McLarens, with a McLaren 123. I'm not sure how much Zach Brown would pay to hear us say that anywhere.
I know, but McLaren on the podium, of course, the last race.
Yes, very exciting. A great drive by Lando Norris there in Monaco last weekend.
Yeah,
so it is a McLaren 123, and confusingly, the fourth car is also red and white, but that was the colours in which the Theodore raced in period.
Theodore being a man called Teddy Yip from Macau, and huge enthusiast.
Owner of a few casinos, I think.
Yep, and just massively enthusiastic about his racing. I mean, he had more success with Formula 5000, where he ran very successful cars. But there, nice shot of the number 2 car, just going round the back of the pit. So one of the nice things, of course, here at Brands Hatch, you can stand, if you're working in the paddock, you can stand at the back and see a bit of racing going on. Often you can't, can you, at a lot of racetracks. So
I think that Halusa is trying to get the measure of Warren Briggs, closing up there under braking. And Warren is a very determined competitor. He also has a very nice large McLaren Can-Am car, which he took over to the States 2 or 3 years ago and has raced over there. But he really enjoys driving the Formula One car and has put a lot of effort into it. Not just putting the car together and the whole package so he could go racing, but working on himself with a driver coach. Because we have to remember, a lot of these guys are jumping into Formula One car, Andrew, and they've not spent their lives motor racing, and a Formula One car is still a Formula One car.
Absolutely, it's a serious piece of kit. Well, this is a nice little battle here for second place, and Warren Briggs, as you said, Chris came over from New Zealand in 1978, working as a fabricator at McLaren, and raced quite successfully in Formula Ford in 1980 and then in Formula Ford 2000. He raced the Formula 3 Anson, a quite rare car for Gary Anderson also. So he's got plenty of driving history.
Lucas Salusa, you have to say that, he did run a little wide there, but it's quite impressive. This young man has not had, as you say, he started his competitive career driving a Bugatti up Prescott Hill Climb. Is a little bit different to driving something with slicks and wings.
And he still races a lot of Bugattis. So we saw, of course, in the piece, well, let's just watch this.
Now he's really thinking about it now.
He's having a good think. Older car, of course, than the one in front.
And isn't it nice to see that these cars can run close together? People used to, who are watching this, perhaps watching historic F1 racing for the first time, are used to modern racing when it is really hard to get a car that close without the air being so completely disturbed it's impossible to actually grip. But here we have young Halusa right behind, absolutely pinned to Warren Briggs's Hewland gearbox.
Using a bit more racetrack as well, to Chris there in the M23.
And I tell you what, these two, Andrew, are holding up in some ways.
Well, Theodore's right there, isn't it?
The Theodore and who's with the Theodore? Oh, that's Mark Hazel in the Williams FW08. Halusa is going to think about this, but the inside of Paddock Hill Bend
could get him at Druids. I don't think he quite got the drive out of Paddock Hill Bend, did he? But he's having a little sniff down the inside, but no way. M23, one of the classic great Formula One cars. James Hunt won World Championship course in an M23.
Yes, he certainly did, and in a car that looks extremely like this car. The car that Halusa is driving, as we heard him say, was a Jochen Mass car, and Hazel having a proper sniff up the inside there, trying to see if he can get up the inside of Phil Hall's Theodore. And the FW8 is the later car, of course, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be the one that's going to nip past him.
Yeah, that Gordon Coppock designed M23. I believe somebody's writing a book about the M23 at the moment. So Hartley, you have to say, is now 7.4 seconds down the road.
Poor old Steve is not getting much coverage on this because he has chosen to, as we say, check out altogether. Halusa again running wide on the exit as he comes out of Sterling's, and appropriate in a number of thoughts that we haven't been able to cover in all these interruptions that we've had to motor racing. But of course, Sterling's is named after the great man who we lost just over a year ago. I think Hazel's, am I hearing his DFV with a bit of a misfire? I would have expected him to be further up, and I just thought it sounded a little 7-cylinderish there. and there's Ian Simmons in the Tyrrell enjoying his own little battle with Mark Davis. Mark Davis there in the Surtees TS16. Davis has a big collection of cars which he races of his own for fun.
And buys and sells.
But he buys and sells in quite a big way. RMD from Belgium is a well-known race car dealer, and he's always got something interesting in his garage.
I've seen him racing very successfully in the Daytona 24 Classic as well.
Yes.
In Lola T70s and that sort of thing.
Yes. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, I'd like a go at this, he's one of the people you could talk to. I'm sure he's got something he'd love to sell you.
I think you need a decent bank balance. Just watching the Williams FW8, of course, the successor to the wonderfully successful FW07, the car that Alan Jones won the World Championship in. And we did see FW07s racing this championship a lot in the past, and Nick Padmore in particular dominating races.
Yes. A very quick young man.
He is here this weekend, driving a Mini, I think.
Yes, I saw him earlier on, and we had a chat. He, of course, was the man who set the all-time outright lap record at Goodwood at the closed doors members meeting last year. I think a 109 round Goodwood rather caught everybody's attention, didn't it?
Certainly did.
The battle carrying on now between Philip Hall there in the Theodore and with Mark Hazel in the FW08 right behind him. And not sure if the two McLarens are any closer, but this is probably the battle at the moment.
Seem to recall that Theodore winning at the International Trophy meeting at Silverstone on a terribly wet day with Keke at the wheel.
Yes, I wonder if that's the same chassis.
I don't think it is. I think it might be an earlier one.
Yes, I think it's an earlier one, because this version with the central note radiator is a bit of a clone of the McLaren M26 with the same look across the front.
A lot of that going on back in those days.
And of course, Andrew, I mean, the difference between the famous FW07 that won everything with Alan Jones and Clay Regazzoni, and then moved itself into becoming the FW08 as the next development, much shorter side pods on the FW08.
Interesting, the FW08 is still an aluminium chassis. At this period of time, a lot of people were changing to carbon fibre. The car which is leading was the first carbon chassis Formula One car to win. John Watson famously at the British Grand Prix, of course. That same design and not that actual car.
Yes, and that was a real innovative piece of design by McLaren. They went to Hercules, the American carbon fibre manufacturer of many armoured and fighter aircraft sort of chassis, if you like, and said, this is what we want to do. Do you think you can do it?
And now it's de rigueur, isn't it? You wouldn't build an aluminium chassis.
You wouldn't build an aluminium chassis really for anything, and all the way down through all the formulae, everything is some form of carbon and composite. Yes, indeed.
Usually with Kevlar. I believe the MP41 didn't have Kevlar in it. Kevlar was introduced, I think, by Lotus after that, which gave it a bit of different extra strength, I think.
And now, of course, if you talk to a carbon composite technician, you can do almost anything with this wonderful material, including even allegedly making current Formula One wings bend a little bit by the way you lay out the weave of the carbon. And if you do that, you'll have a little bit less rigidity, and that will allow it. Just noticed that. I don't know if Hazel's running some higher temperatures from getting too close. It is beginning to warm up out here today.
Yeah, so Briggs has pegged Hartley lead back to about 7.8 seconds now. And I noticed Hartley's still getting purples in some sectors. So Briggs is still getting purples in some sectors. Hartley has possibly backed off a bit. There is that six-wheel Tyrrell. With Jonathan
there
Holtzman.
Is Ken Tyrrell in the denim-sponsored Tyrrell. Isn't it great to see them there? Now, the arrows there of Neil Glover's having quite a quiet race. Neil, well known as a regular competitor. Holtzman in the six-wheeler is now closing in on him. We're into on the 8th lap now, and this is a timed race. So it'll be 20-minute race and to the conclusion of the lap that the leader is on when 20 minutes comes up, and we've got 7 3/4 minutes to go.
Other six-wheel Formula One cars were built, but they had four wheels at the back. March did one, of course.
And Williams did one as well. We had the Williams one in the museum at Donington for many years before the museum at Donington was closed.
It never actually raced.
It never raced, but the six-wheel March has raced in Masters F1 at the Silverstone Classic a few years ago. owned by the Smith family from Yorkshire. And it's also, of course, hill climb, because that's one quite useful addition of 2 rear wheels for traction. But they weren't actually banned, were they, 6-wheelers?
No,
there was just a decision that there were other ways to go about getting the grip one wanted, aerodynamics, and that was a bit the same as what happened to the idea of having 4-wheel drive in Formula One as well.
Yeah.
And here we've got Hazel now. He's absolutely closed right back up again on the
Theodore,
the Theodore, and I thought he was going to go for it, but let's see if he can close up as they come up to Druids, the famous hairpin.
One of the things I love about this period of Formula One cars 40 odd years ago was the diversity of designs. These days, all the Formula One cars look the same because they're all designed by a computer program, which is probably the same, or different people use the same computer program, and big surprise, they come up with the same answer.
Pretty much the same answer.
Back
and
in
of
those
course,
days,
much tighter regulation as well.
What
regulation on everything in modern Formula One has made it so difficult. Look, Salusa has actually dropped back a little bit from Warren Briggs. Warren Briggs has really been getting on with it.
Usually in this period we'd have some Lotuses as well.
Yes.
Lotus 88 and cars like that.
Well, I had the privilege recently of having a big tour of the classic Team Lotus workshop up in Norfolk, which has been new premises they're now in. That whole business has been so successful, with Colin Chapman's son, Clive Chapman, very much in charge. Some beautiful cars being rebuilt and run for competitors. They'd obviously hoped to go to the Monaco Historique, but it wasn't possible. There are 1 or 2 Lotuses in private hands, including that one from Germany that Marco Werner was going to bring here. But it's wonderful to see the black and gold Lotuses out in those historic colours. But we must say that with a field of 12 cars, we're being properly entertained.
We absolutely are, but it looks as if Hartley's going to put another win in the book.
5 minutes to go, and he doesn't particularly look threatened by Warren Briggs and Halusa behind them. I think, a little bit of oversteer from Halusa as he came through bottom bend.
So Hartley had that cracking first lap, didn't he? Pulled out 4.5 seconds or so, extended it now to 8.7. But I would say it's just cruising now. But meanwhile, Briggs doing an excellent job, and just wonderful to see these 2 McLarens together.
We were talking, Andrew, about the sponsorship and the cigarette sponsorship. That little big lock up there by Halusa. Well, it got a little bit more contentious later on, and people had to, as you say, take the branding off. And I remember a few years ago being involved with the historic Formula One support race at the French Grand Prix at Manicourt. And of course, a number of the cars that had arrived from all over Europe to take part in that race were still bearing Marlboro branding.
Yes, because France was another country that
banned it. And France was very strong on that. And the poor lawyer from Philip Morris, the company that owns Marlboro, came running round to my office and saying, quick, you've got to put stickers all over all these cars. And it was Max Mosley, R.I.P., who intervened and said, no, they are running to the FIA historic regulations, which is period livery. And with that waiver, the cars all ran the historic Grand Prix at Manicourt with that livery. Halusa, since he's flat spotted one of his tyres, is finding he's not able to close up on Warren anymore.
And we mentioned Marlboro on that car, but Texaco were a very big part of that programme. I worked on some of the PR campaigns because they had 2 world champions in '76. Texaco.
Yes.
Barry Sheen.
Oh,
no, the Theodore
Philip Hall,
stopped.
That's a shame.
That stopped in a difficult place, I think, Chris, hasn't it?
That is not where we would want it. I think, is that on the outskirts? Yes.
You just see the badge for Rosberg on there. See the finish just behind the roll car.
Yes, indeed.
The finish flag.
And it really has stopped. Now, with 3 minutes to go, the race director, that's Richard Cohn-Gandidier, is going to have to make a decision there as to what it is that needs to be done. The rest of the field is out and
he was
and
climbing
running.
out,
But he's climbing out, and the 2 cars now, Mr. Hartley is going to be upon the parked Philip Hall car. That's a great shame that he's obviously had something reasonably terminal there. At 2.5 minutes to run on race time. I think it's probably going to be able to run past yellows there, so everyone's got to look out there. He's
I don't like
well
that
out of the car.
Out there.
No, I don't like seeing that. Yellow flags being waved, but The race director's got all the information. He'll be able to see where we are going to be. Hartley still leads by some 8 or 9 seconds from Briggs and
I'm a bit
Halusa.
confused, Chris, because on our timing screen it says the gap's 8.9, but on our actual screen it said 24 seconds.
We've got a safety car,
Yeah, we have,
and
yeah.
I think probably that means the race is going to finish under the safety car. I think probably Steve Hartley had slowed down because absolutely, there he goes. He'd already seen that they were throwing the safety car out.
Well, we played a little game, Chris, this morning, didn't we? Trying to see who would be on pole position and who would win the races and interview them. And there's one up to us already.
Let's see if we can.
Assuming
See if
the
we
car
can keep
doesn't stop on the last couple of laps.
That's right. And so that will mean that Mark Hazel, therefore, risen to 4th place after his dueling partner here, poor Phil Hall.
Having to push his.
And it doesn't look as though it's dumped an enormous amount of oil.
It might be electrical, or maybe some transmission problem. And of course, the sticky tyres picked up a bit of gravel. He's jumping back into it to steer it, and they've got it out of the way.
Yes.
And pushed it through the daisies, basically.
Pushed it through the daisies. I wonder if that means they'll be able to have one last racing lap, or whether they're going to have to flag it off.
I think they'll be flagging off, won't they, Chris?
It may well be.
Oh, now he's climbed over the barrier.
Yeah,
and
he's
the fans
safely out of the way.
There's guys with their cameras and their iPhones already, and he's got a nice shot there as he takes his helmet off.
Yeah.
And
there we go.
Saw the pace car.
The safety car's off, and no reason why not. Let's have another racing lap.
Yeah.
Good call, isn't that nice? That's a good sign to see.
Call that.
And I think they're still under yellows.
Yeah.
So Hartley's going to reckon that he could control this. Oh no, Halusa, I think you'll find yourself.
No, the green flag's waving. Look on the left. So that's a
Don't
good move.
let's tangle each other. You don't need to do that. I think Briggs was saying, I'm not having any of that. So we're going to finish in fairly close formation. Just trust that the last lap goes elegantly.
Interesting, because we've got the last but one of the old McLarens before it was taken over by Ron Dennis, and the first of the Ron Dennis cars all here in line. So Halusa hasn't given up, has he, by any chance?
He hasn't.
No,
and Ian Simmons in the Tyrrell there with the Benetton sponsorship thinks he fancies his chances against Mark Hazel as well.
Yeah.
And I think Warren Briggs in the McLaren M29 here, the first car here with the silver helmet, is going to make that the widest M29 that's ever been built all the way round. They're coming now down to 2/3 of the lap round, and that's coming down to Stirling's and up to the bridge for the last time. And I think that there's going to be a bit of a big effort here by young Lucas Salusa on the outside. You don't want to go around the outside at Clearways.
That usually doesn't work. But he's there with him. Look, has he done it?
Famous for not working.
Well, he did.
I think. There you go. So a McLaren 1-2-3, but Halusa did just jump Briggs on the line.
Excellent.
And young Lucas Halusa from Austria, then after trying to do it all through the race, got his moment as a result so often of the safety car pulling the field together.
And he's much less experienced in these sort of cars than the people around him, so that's an outstanding performance by the Austrian. Very good job by him.
Yes.
And
well done, Steve Hartley.
And the thing is about Halusa, he drives all sorts of different. We're going to see him later in the famous one-off Ferrari bread van.
Yes, indeed.
He still races Bugattis and also other cars, fabulous cars in his father's fleet.
Well then, that really is a fine taste.
Could be the move of the day.
Yeah, that's right. A proper taste of some proper Formula One cars. And just to run through the provisional results there for Steve Hartley from Lucas Salusa. And it says Chris Petch. I think that's.
Well, we got a bit of a
yes. There's something strange has happened to the number here.
Warren Briggs third. Forget the second, third, and fourth lines. That Warren Briggs third. Mark Hazel was fourth in the Williams.
And Ian Simmons was fifth, and then Mark Davis was sixth.
Yeah.
I think, sorry, gents.
I think the computer's done a bit of a scramble there, but at least we get the general idea of it, don't we? So,
and behind Mark Davis, sixth in his Tyrrell, and of course in his Surtees, excuse me.
Yeah.
The first six, Andrew, were always the only point scorers in Grand Prix of the real period, not as we are now of the first 10. Followed home by Mark Harrison in the little black Arrows, very nice car. Mr. Tyrrell in his Tyrrell, so well done, Ken. He's finished a race. He's not a hugely experienced racer. From Neil Glover in the orange and white Arrows, and then Jonathan Holtzman in the fabulous P34. And we do have
and Chris Perkins retired.
And Chris Perkins retired in the Surtees TS14. But well done.
Well, just recapturing the sights and sounds of Brands Hatch 40 years ago, Chris. I mean,
yes, and there used to be, of course, 2 Formula One races here, Andrew, in the day in which there was a Grand Prix, because in the late spring was always an event called the Race of the Champions, which towards the end of its career combined F1 and Formula 5000 as things got more serious. I hope Jonathan Holtzman is happy with his first proper race in this car, and he can't turn the steering wheel. He thinks he wants to go back to the garage.
I was going to get a little push, look.
Yeah, it's been very good to see these cars out there and doing that on a sunny day at Brands Hatch. What more could you ask for than the noise of 12 DFVs?
Those wheels, 10 inches, the front wheels.
Yeah.
I think they were 13s, or 15s normally. And of course, the Goodyear had to make special tyres for them.
So what size are a Mini's wheels then?
They were 10 inch, weren't they? Mini wheels were 10 inch. And later went to 12, I think.
Yeah.
The Brands Hatch bridge there. We got a shot of that. But I mean, that was a great move by Salusa. And just going past Briggs, caught him unawares a little bit, I think. But nice race and a great way to start this meeting. And coming up next will be a group of cars called Equipe Libre. And well, from the sublime, not to the ridiculous, but to the road going, I think, because we've got a big field of cars coming up for Equipe Libre, and probably MGBs, those sort of cars. So we'll be interested to see how that pans out.
Yes, Andrew, I mean, one of the shames about the current protocols for running race meetings is it's not so possible to have a great crowd in front of a little podium in the pit lane to greet everybody. So I'm sure you'll understand that our audience will understand that unfortunately it's not possible to bring you either pictures of people on a podium, because there isn't one,
or interviews,
nor a pit lane interview after the race.
But having said that, they will get their trophies and their garlands down in the Masters tent later on. So they will have the spoils of victory to take home with them. And Steve Hartley had all those years in the Arrow, 8 years he raced Arrows.
Yes,
and,
I mean, in fact, I think
this is his 3rd year with the McLaren, I think. I remember him the first time he drove it at a Silverstone test. I happened to be there.
Yeah.
Well, as he said, did he say on the interview? He certainly said to us, it's twice as good as the Arrows.
Well, yes, it will be. Yes. While we have a little downtime after the excitement of the Formula One race, and isn't that great, Andrew, to see a crowd walking off into the woods of Brands Hatch to go and get some great views out in some of the most iconic corners in all of British motor racing. Fantastic. So yes, coming up is the invited grid into the Masters Festival from Equipe Libre, which is for pre-66 under, their whole theory is generally they run under 2 litre cars, but they've got a nice invitation grid here with some E-types and some Mustangs and some Cobras.
Yep, but I think a Cobra's on the pole.
Before we get to them, we did take a chance earlier on this morning to talk to Ron Maiden, the founder and the president of Masters Historic Racing, and to ask him how he sees the 2021 season going, and how this whole event has come together in such difficult times. So I think we can hear from Ron Maiden. So Ron Maiden then, Brands Hatch is always a big event in the Masters calendar, but you must be particularly happy in this difficult year to be here.
Yes, we are very happy, and we've got 2 grids here that are massively oversubscribed. So yeah, what can I say? The sun's shining, well, almost. It's not raining anyway, and everyone just wants to race. So it's a great vibe, and yeah, we're happy.
The Formula One field, some beautiful, beautiful cars there. We look forward to that later on. Obviously missing some of the Europeans who we all wish were here, but things will pick up in the course of the year.
Well, we lost 5 F1 cars on one day. When Germany put Britain on the red list, that really hurt us a lot. We got 22 on the grid for Paul Ricard in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, you know, it has to be for fun. And if it's not fun travelling somewhere, why would you do it? The prize money's not that great, you know.
Well, of course, that's a great truth that people watching this show this afternoon and tomorrow may not realise, Ron, but everyone is doing this because they really love it. They're not going to win a championship. They're not going to win a vast prize. It is extraordinary how strong historic racing is, isn't it?
Well, you know, people spend a lot of money to have fun. And it really is all about the passion for Formula One cars. They're very expensive to run, they're dangerous, but boy, the joy you get from them is untold. There's nothing quite like the sight, the sound, and driving one. So, yeah, it's a lot of money and it's a lot of fun, but it can't be difficult to get to a circuit. That's just too much.
So this grid here, the gentleman drivers grid, has been a fantastic success for Masters. And looking at this, we've got a Bread Van Ferrari, we've got Cobras and E-Types coming out of our ears. And you're racing yourself in this race, are you not?
I didn't hear you.
You are racing in this gentleman drivers.
Oh yeah, well, Christopher, as you know, I don't race, I drive. I have to make sure that the majority of my competitors beat me. So it's very difficult when you're in my position. You have to go slow. Yeah, all joking aside, I'm driving a little Ginetta with Mike Wilds. I'm the slowest of the two of us, so he's put me out first. But anyway, it's a lot of fun, and it's a fantastic grid. I mean, it's oversubscribed, and the cars on it are just sublime. And you will notice we got some stars from the modern world here. Rundle, Alex Lynn. I mean, this is what they really love.
But to have Mike Wilds in your car is quite a coup. Mike Wilds raced Formula One cars in period on this circuit, and it was a factory driver for BRM, among other things. He's still enjoying this, is he?
He's still enjoying it. He's still too fast, but he's a lovely, lovely man. So I guess coming second to a nice man's not so bad, is it? No, he's very, very good. When he gives you the car, it's always in perfect order. So that's good.
And Ron Masters is also racing in the United States. President of Masters, and it's a great pleasure for Masters to have invited in the Equipe Libre boys, and they're going to now have a race pretty much for pre-66 GT cars, all sorts of impressive bits of machinery, and on the front row we have Charlie Allison and Peter Thompson. It is a two-driver race, and they have, it's not a two-driver race, excuse me, you will have a second race tomorrow.
Yeah,
and
now there's one car I'm watching for.
Go on.
And that is number 26, Jamie Mason, because he is driving a Turner Mark II. The first ever race meeting I went to as a non-spectator was as sort of pit board boy for Team Turner, the factory team from, well, actually the cars were made in Wolverhampton, the factory team is based in Derby.
Yep.
I now own a Turner, actually a Mark III, slightly later car than this.
And another great name from racing history there in the red and white striped Healy there, car number 20 on the grid, being driven by no less than Jonathan Abacassis, the grandson of George Abacassis, founder in many ways of Britain's Formula One world, because he built the HWMs, and they're off.
Yeah, HWM, but Simon Taylor's recently written a book about Hersham and Walton.
Aggressive start there by the TVR Grantura, the silver car with the blue stripes down the middle. Oh, 3 wide through Paddock Hill Bend. Well done.
This is real great clubman's racing, is it? Look at this, and
proper
classic
stuff.
Cars, yes, but I see the Cobra.
Abacassis got himself.
Lead,
yeah, up to 3 abreast round Druids is going to be very tight. And I tell you what, that Shelby Mustang looks nice, doesn't it? It's a 350 GT there.
Yeah, a bit of locking up going on. There's Abacassis in the Healy, red with the twin white stripes. There's the Turner, that's the white car that I was talking about in the middle of the field and about to be overtaken, no, maybe not by an Elva Courier.
Great to see the British marques, the special builders, the Elva Couriers, the Turners, the TVRs. Yeah, and these cars are all running on proper 1966 spec Dunlop narrow tyres, the L section tyre, and that doesn't give you an enormous amount of grip. Makes a wonderful contrast, doesn't it, Andrew, to the grip we just saw Formula One cars with. The widest tyres there ever were in Formula One was pretty much the period of the cars we were just looking at, with fantastic grip. And we've got someone running very slowly, number 91, the MGB there, clearly with some sort of problem, because he's dropped right back. That's Mark Holm, who was on row 6. So he's had some problem. MGB's at great angles, that's the right way of looking at it.
I saw a Lotus 11 in there. I'm not sure that doesn't really belong in this group.
Now there you go.
Yeah.
And
was that pass for the lead, was it?
Well, that was a pass for the lead, and I'm extremely impressed by young Tom Smith there.
Yeah.
Car number 22 in the lead has taken the Cobra coming out of Sterling's, which is quite a bold manoeuvre. And look, he's got the Cobra's clearly got a problem.
Yeah.
The Cobra's got a problem because he's dropped right away.
So there are two of these races, 2020, this meeting, which was later in the year, and it was Tom Smith who won the first of those in the MGB. So he's looking for a repeat victory.
The Tucker father and son, Larry and Laurie, that's them in the Shelby Mustang 350 GTR. Proper tyre squeal as we go through Druids, which is the right thing, from properly treaded period correct tyres.
And a very impressive grid of cars, Chris. I think 26 or so in this, and a relatively, racing's never cheap, whatever you do, but a relatively cheap racing way to go racing. And the 91 car
has indeed stopped.
Yeah, he's stopped.
Poor
and
chap.
Here's Mark Holm in his MGB, and there you see him. He's already climbed out of it, and they're just at the side of the track. And you know, racing has its highs and lows. For him today was one of the lows. So the Smith car has got just a half a second lead over the Tuckers. Not quite sure which Tucker it is today.
821 there is the Robert Binfield E-Type, which has come through there, lying there in what is fifth position, excuse me. And he's holding on. The other thing you'll notice that compared to our first race we were just enjoying, a lot quieter.
A lot quieter.
Everyone running to correct Motorsport UK noise spec.
That car's left-hand drive, look, the Avacas's car.
Yes, I wonder where he got that from then, because most people who race Healey's, even if they've been brought back from the States, do convert them back to correct side drive, if that's what we're trying to say.
Quite a few of the Blackpool-built TVRs in this, Grand Tourer, which was the earlier, I think mainly had MGB engines back in those days.
Yes, indeed.
Of course, now we see TVRs with great big V8 engines, and the TVR company has now reappeared, hasn't it, with a car designed by Gordon Murray, the famous McLaren designer.
No less, and that car is still doesn't seem to have hit production, though, in any great run.
No.
This is a 30-minute race, we should say, timed race again. So we're just 5 minutes into it, and clearly, Andrew, we're going to have a whole series of battles going on. That pretty little TVR, number 69, is really very well presented. Rob Cull at the wheel, and Rob has come up from the 7th row. Yes, the 7th row on the grid.
I think he's got 2 or 3 TVRs, actually, Rob. I think he does race one of the V8 engine ones as well, and we'll see him later in the Gentleman Drivers race for that. But obviously an enthusiast for the Blackpool brand, or the former Blackpool brand.
So we've already lost then car number 14, which has faded from view. Nick Vince in his MGB. We saw Mark Holmes' car stopping number 91, and then Charlie Allison, Peter Thompson, that shared Cobra, which took off from pole position and looked as though he meant it. Afraid has not completed a lap, so that leaves us with an impressive 25 or so cars still fighting it out, and battles all the way down through the grid. I'm not sure the TVR's got enough grunt to get at that E-Type.
I wouldn't have
but
thought so, particularly at Brands.
The two Bs behind him are giving him plenty to think about, aren't they?
Yeah, two different shades of blue. There's the TVR coming onto the main straight again and then hurtling towards Paddock Hill Bend. Always remember that the TVR's got those three orifices at the front that look rather like a 250 GTO Ferrari. I can assure you TVR's a lot cheaper. There's that Mustang.
That's a very nice car, isn't it? And looks very smartly turned out as well.
Sort of American racing colours, isn't that?
Our leader here has just set the fastest lap. And
you can see he's really on it, can't you?
He really is on it. He's got it at all sorts of angles. But he is now, the Tuckers are making progress. And what are they now? They're just a second and a half behind him.
Yeah, that's about at 1.382 according to our timing screen there. And still quite a long way to go, 23 minutes.
Abacassis looks relatively secure in his third place. But you're right, Andrew, there was a Lotus 11 here. There is a Lotus 11 on screen with the red wheels, and that was Lotus's late 1950s, well, car designed to win the Le Mans classes for the smaller 1100cc cars.
Performance, but I'm not sure why it's mixed in with these.
Well, it's Lotus 11 Le Mans, and it belongs to Sandy Watson.
Yeah.
Car number 125.
But my point is, Chris, that these are road-going cars, and Lotus 11 was built for racing, and these are cars that were built for the road that you went and raced. There's my Turner again.
There's your Turner again.
I didn't get to speak to him because some of them raced with Climax engines in, and some raced with BMC A-Series engines, and later with Fords actually, so it could have any one of three different motors. And that's a car from probably 1962.
I think if he's leading a racer as experienced as Sandy Watson in the Lotus 11, we're going to assume he's got the Climax leads in, and has someone spun?
Well, we saw a lot of tyre smoke, didn't we? And they went through the tyre smoke and no sign of anybody in the grass, so it was just a bit of a lock-up. Oh, picked up my Turner again.
You see
built at Penderford Airfield in Wolverhampton. It's going to be passed by the Lotus 11 now.
Well, I think that's fair enough. Well, that is two Climax engine cars, of course.
It should be, assuming that has got a Climax in. The famous Turner was the Tatty Turner that used to beat a lot of Lotus Elites. Cars that I was involved with running were in the 1 litre class, and they ran the A-Series engines, and Brian Bennett and John Seabrook were the drivers, and I was talking to John, who I've known for over 50 years, just the other day.
Well, I mean, and the famous Tatty Turner, of course, was very nicely driven at Goodwood a couple of years ago.
Right. He changed owners quite a lot, actually.
By Darren Turner, the Aston Martin factory driver.
Darren Turner has got his own Turner.
He's got his own.
Well, he hasn't, because he's sold it now.
Right.
So he had enough of that. Darren Turner found out about the Turner because I told him about it. He didn't know that was a sports car manufacturer named after him.
Well, or the other way round.
The the Aston Martin factory driver, of course.
The one we're just looking at here, the second one of these, car number 154, the darker blue with the white roof, is being driven by Austin Kinsella.
Oh,
now,
right.
You will remember that name. Is that not a good Irish rallying name?
Yeah, I think it is.
He's giving it plenty there.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a number of people aren't very keen on using the racetrack there as they come?
Well, you know,
as they come through. Well, that's Sheen Curve nowadays, isn't it?
Under the bridge, and very different motor cars. There's the E-Type going through. Then we got the TVR, and then two MGBs absolutely locked in battle here.
With Austin Kinsella in the second one, and he's really looking for an opportunity to get past the headlights on. That's going to be given plenty of flash.
Yeah.
Yep. And giving it plenty, and that is the car number 6 there is the car of Neil Fisher in that's a 1965 car. And that's a nice battle there with the Turner, that's Rob Cull in that car, just in front of Fisher, and then Austin Kinsella in number 154, and they're having a proper battle, and it's great. You can really drift it through Graham Hill Bend, can't you?
TVR, of course, shortened version of Trevor Wilkinson, who was the founder of TVR short for Trevor, taking the vowels out and a few other letters as well.
And the Blackpool mark, as you said, Andrew, did come to a rather sad end under some non-British ownership in the early 2000s, but it has been picked up again as a brand.
Well, it was not so long ago, was it? Remember people like Richard Hay racing the DeWalt Tools TVRs at Le Mans.
At Le Mans, yes, indeed. At the same sort of time that Morgan was still racing at Le Mans as well, in what was then called GT2, wasn't it? Yeah, that's right. The sort of, if you like, the equivalent of what we... Oh dear, that's a shame. The Tucker family, Larry and Laurie Tucker.
I think it's Larry driving.
Yeah, and that has clearly got an unexpected problem.
Well, two American cars in this race, both seem to hit problems, so it's an all-British show now, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Well, almost an all-British show. There is an Alfa Romeo out there.
Yep.
But it's a shame that the Cobra and the big Mustang seem to have given up.
Yeah.
The Ghost, unfortunately, this is proper battle now.
Terrific scrap, this, isn't it?
And this is now being for the last podium position, of course, because in second place now is the 821 car, which is the E-Type of Robert Binfield, and here is the E-Type, and he's being closed down, in fact, now by what is that's third, fourth, and fifth there. And Carl Fisher and Kinsella are really at it. They haven't managed to change positions yet, but they're certainly not messing around. And the E-Type is beginning to slide.
Well, in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be at Chelsea Walsh for the E-Type event, big E-Type.
Absolutely. At the 60th anniversary.
Yeah, 60th anniversary. I'm running an art gallery there. There's a lot of the artists come up with pictures of paintings of E-Types, I can tell you. But,
well, around my part of the world in Coventry, Andrew, you can be sure that there's an enormous amount of local planning going on for all sorts of E-Type
now
events.
the MGBs are almost side by side, look.
Austin Kinsella looking up the inside, but not quite there. Just not quite got the grunt to really push it past Neil Fisher there in the number 6 car. As you were saying, Andrew, the E-Type 60th anniversary being partially celebrated here by John Binfield holding his second place. I'm not far from Gaydon and the British Motor Museum. And of course also Jaguar Land Rover are also there at Gaydon now, with their special operations department as well. And E-Type mania is reaching a pretty big high. Later on this year, for those who love the E-Type, note that there's going to be a big tribute to the E-Type at the Silverstone Classic event in July, and a number of celebrations throughout the year organised by the Jaguar Enthusiast Club and by the factory. So it's really, if you ever loved or got involved with E-Type Jaguars, you're going to be having a good summer, given a little bit more freedom and time out in the fresh air.
So Kinsella there, guy who's raced in the past in Radicals.
And he's certainly enjoying himself in this one, but they've just stretched out a little bit, and the TVR's just got itself 50 metres of breathing space.
Yeah. But I like the angles they're getting these MGBs too, and there's the 154 car. Right tucked in behind the lighter blue one, and a 4-car battle here with Smith really, use an American expression, has checked out, hasn't he? So 15 seconds up the road now, and looking to repeat his victory from a year ago, this meeting.
Well, what's so encouraging about this is Tom Smith's a young man, we saw in the Formula One race. Lucas Salusa is a young man as well, and we're just temporarily sorting out an issue with the pictures. It's good to see young people enjoying historic racing. Sometimes it looks as though you've got to have enjoyed life and earned something and gone out and bought your historic car. But in fact, for a lot of young people, and we've got a lot of young stars of the current era at this meeting.
We certainly have a lot of touring car drivers like Jake Smith here, and Alex Brundle we're going to see racing later.
Son of Martin, and himself an extremely quick Le Mans driver nowadays, and also the Lynn family all had a chance to share a car in the gentleman drivers race tomorrow morning, the 90-minute enduro race for pre-66 GTs. And of course, Alex Lynn, is now a factory driver in Formula E.
Yeah.
He's been a factory driver for Aston Martin at Le Mans in the last few years.
Yeah.
There are a lot of young people who know that the skills you can hone racing a historic car on narrow tyres and in close competition is really relevant to your modern racing career.
Yeah. Well, tomorrow we'll see an interview I did with Alex Brundle.
Oh, good.
Obviously, pole position in the Lola T70. Very interesting what he had to say about the comparisons of racing a T70 against the current LMP2 cars that he races. Just a little bit background, we don't see him now, but Thomas Smith, who is leading, he works with his father, Doug, at Bovingdon Airfield, and I think they run a business basically preparing MGBs and so on. And he's had some successes. I think he won earlier, certainly at the Silverstone Amok meet at the end of last year.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a class win in the 2016 Spa 6 Hours. So this is a well-honed car with a well-honed family team.
Yeah.
And
Kinsella's gone up the inside.
Oh, he has,
That I think maybe a certain amount of camera angle foreshortening there,
well,
but it did look as though he was about to do it.
Yeah.
But that's great about young Smith. And at Bovingdon, of course, there's something else that is built and prepared there in considerable volume, and that is the British Army's tank regiments. Bovingdon being the main cavalry base for the Royal Tank Regiment and everybody else.
So, Chris, we're seeing these MGBs racing. What we should say, back in the day, the BMC had a let's just talk through this before we. Well, they had factory teams that raced at places like Le Mans and
Sebring and Daytona
and so on, with drivers like Andrew Hedges, I remember, and Paddy Hopker, the great rally driver, also used to race in MGBs. So there's plenty of history here, and MGB's race from every level, from club racing up to the big internationals.
Well, I mean, if you look through the entry list,
he's trying again down the inside.
There's great racing here. Kinsella is determined to take the tighter line, and it's really getting a bit close. Neil Fisher defending vigorously. Proper open face helmet there, good to see. And Kinsella now right on him again. I think he's detected.
Might get down the inside this time, and he's got the line. Still quite a bit of speed around the outside there. They're racing nice and cleanly and fairly there, but a terrific battle between those two MGBs.
Which has allowed Cull in the TVR there just to ease away into third place a little bit, hasn't it?
These guys probably have a beer afterwards and discuss the battle. It's that sort of kind of racing, isn't it?
Quite right too. Just thinking about, as you say, Andrew, the factory presence of MGs continued in endurance racing really quite late. The one I remember is here at Brands Hatch, 1967, BOAC 500, Chaparral Phil Hill winning. But at the back was a factory MG with the V8 engine in it.
Right.
I mean, I'm not sure how many times he was lapped, but it was quite a lot.
Yeah. But they took it very seriously.
They took it very seriously, and it was a big part of the development of the MG racing history.
And it sold cars, and of course, this battle continues.
Fantastic.
He's going to try down the inside again. And he's got to do it, isn't he?
Now has he got him? He has got him. Well driven, sir. And I think now you're going to come along the pit straight side by side.
Yeah, look at that.
Yes.
Terrific stuff.
MG's own club, of course, organises a lot of racing itself. It's one of the biggest one-make clubs. And in fact, it's one of the biggest one-make clubs in the world. Huge numbers of members, perennially close racing, as is demonstrated by this great battle between the MGBs of Fisher and Kinsella. Kinsella now back in car number 154. Whoa! That's getting very close. Any moment now there's going to be an exchange of paint colour.
Well, blue on blue, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going on to say, Chris, was because the MG also like to break records at places like the Bonneville Salt Flats. They built special streamline races, and Sterling Moss was one of the people that raced or drove those cars on the Bonneville Salt Flats.
Yes, indeed. It was a beautiful, wasn't it? Sort of flying saucer shape
well,
of special-bodied MG.
Two or three, call them EX, sort of experimental. There was quite a few of them.
Which name MG continued right through to the era of the Masters Endurance legends, Lola MG EX257. They called it.
We're going to see Mike Newton racing that car tomorrow in the Legends race.
The man who raced it at Le Mans in period.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with the same team manager.
Yep, and the same mechanics. I mean, it's fantastic.
Alan Jakeman and the boys there.
Prepared by the Ray Mallock Racing, RML, and really fantastic to see. These two are not going to give up, are they? And Austin Kinsella is shown now on the running order as being in 4th position. He is, in fact, in 5th position. But they are so closely tied together, and they're swapping places all round the track.
So we got 3 MGBs out of the top 4 places, only the TVR spoiling the Abingdon party here. And these two still are hammer and tongs at it, aren't they?
Well, no, let's not forget Mr. Binfield.
Oh, Mr. Binfield, yeah.
In car number 821 in the Jaguar.
Oh, the E-Type, yeah, sorry. Just forgot that one. But, yeah. Very good performance by the MG, so well sorted, these cars.
Yeah, and further down the field, there's a lot of close racing going on. Yes, and we are focusing on this great battle for what is now 4th and 5th. But further down the field, we have a lot more MGs. We have the rare Ashley MG midget, the Turner that Andrew was talking about earlier.
In our picture right now.
There you go. Thank you very much. With a nice Healy just behind. In fact, I think that is the Paul Mortimer's car, which is a Healy 100.
Yes. Not
to be confused with a Healy 3000. Body shape very similar, but it was a later development, the Healy 3000. And the Healy 100. I tell you what, that is a wonderful paint job there on car number 4 that we're looking at.
Do you know what we're missing, Chris? A Sunbeam Tiger.
We are missing a Sunbeam Tiger.
Yeah, we should have a Sunbeam Tiger in this. But younger.
And of course, there is also the TVRs we're talking about with the MGB engine, but TVR also made, as we will see in Gentlemen Drivers tomorrow morning, and we hope that you will join us again then for a full day of racing. Obviously, this morning was qualifying here at Brands Hatch, but for a full day of racing from Brands Hatch tomorrow with the Masters grids, including Formula One having a second run. And in fact, just to whet your appetite a little bit about what we will be seeing while we're enjoying the Equipe Libre invitation race here. But looking ahead to tomorrow, Sunday at Brands Hatch, we start with the endurance race for gentlemen drivers. Wonderful cars in that, including Lucas Halusa's V12 Ferrari 250 GTO, beyond the price of anybody's dreams, that car. Yes. And we hope then that the single-seater demonstrations that we were looking forward to having some more modern Formula One cars will get a chance to run, which was unfortunately had to be withdrawn from them today. There is some qualifying very quickly for the mini race that will happen later in the afternoon. And then the big race, Masters Historic Sports Cars, those up to 1974 Le Mans type cars, Chevrons, Lolas, wonderful, wonderful cars. And then after lunch, the race for the minis, 20 minutes of madcap fun that'll be. Another race for Masters Historic Formula One. These boys from Equipe Libre will get a second short race tomorrow afternoon, and we look forward to that, having entertained us so much just now. And the Masters Endurance Legends get their second race tomorrow afternoon, and the Sunday concludes with the wonderful minis, the pre-66 minis, having another 20-minute race.
Yeah, we got a massive grid of those, haven't we? But
they've got a really fantastic program tomorrow, which we will be live streaming to you for the entire day. That's if Andrew and I last out.
Well, I'm sure we will. So just look at that lead now, 20 seconds. We're not seeing much of the leader, but we've still got this great battle between these other two MGBs. The TVR running just in front. And
very nicely prepared car, that, Andrew.
No, you just saw his hand come up in the cockpit. I'm not sure why.
The Jaguar is not as far up the road as I thought it was.
No.
And it may well be that the little TVR has a chance to have a nibble at the MGBs seem to have sorted themselves out a bit, with Kinsella now pulling away just a little bit from Fisher. Now in a solid 5th place, and Sandy Watson in the Lotus 11, the little open sports racer, has got himself up now. He's a little bit further away.
Yeah,
he's 4 or 5 seconds behind, but he is now in 6th place.
Well, look, a lot of opposite lock there, just having real fun driving here, and magnificent Brown.
Well, hold on a minute. Is that the leader slowing? The red MG. Did we see him slowing there?
No, he's lapping people.
He's lapping people.
Yeah, he's lapping that Porsche 911, just going through, and
or having his
the
nose
guy hadn't
cut.
seen him, and he's going to lock
having
up.
His nose cut off.
Yeah.
Yes, that won't be popular. I think the Porsche thinks that he's.
Well, that's Mr. Zizza, who's zizzing along.
Yes, Guy Zizza, who started on row 10.
Yeah.
I think he was probably required to have seen the blue flag a little earlier, don't you?
Classic original Porsche 911 in that dark green colour. It's one of their favourite colours, actually.
Yes, there were some shocking colours at the same time, though, weren't they, in that period? You could have one in sandy brown, or there was a very unpleasant orange as well. He's driven really well, hasn't he?
He's got a number plate on the go, drives that kind of road.
Yes, I mean that's a big psychological advantage, isn't it? And when you're closing in on him, thinking that you're doing all right, you notice he can actually take it down to the shops.
Yeah. Very good drive by him. Final 3 minutes of this race now. There's that Porsche that's just been lapped. I wonder why he chose 777. 22, and he's still wringing the neck of that, isn't he, really?
He's not giving it any peace at all. 22 seconds clear of Binfield's E-Type, who is himself 3 seconds clear of Rob Cull in the little TVR, with the Kinsella-Fisher battle just behind them. But
so Smith allowed to play on his own after the 2 American cars dropped out, and there he continues on his way under the bridge, and just enjoying this 2.65 mile circuit here in the Kentish sunshine.
Yes, and they are lapping in sort of around 2 minutes themselves, so with 2 minutes on the clock.
Oh, that's getting a bit hectic. And
that's the Elva Courier and the Healy 100. That was a splendid piece of overtaking there.
The Elva's built in Rye in Sussex by Frank Nichols, and driving down that way the other day I saw Elva Way, so I suppose that's where the factory was. I never went in period, but the name you conjure up with Elva Courier is an extraordinary character called Chris Meek.
Yes, indeed.
Then went on to
run Mallory Park.
Owned Mallory Park, ran Titan Properties.
Yes.
Backed Tom Price, a great Welsh driver, and I mean, he still looked like a rock star when he was 70 with his hair down to his shoulders. And there's a funny story about Chris Meek was the girlfriends never got to beyond about 22, and when the one got to 22, he went back to a 16-year-old, and he'd probably get in trouble for that these days. But the final one, the Russian one, she stayed with him for a long time.
And is indeed still the widow. Mrs. Meek is still there.
Yeah.
Yes, the Elva Courier. Now, the thing that's interesting about Elva, of course, is that modern supercar enthusiasts will note that the latest open McLaren from the factory, road car McLaren, is called the McLaren Elva, because when Bruce McLaren had first developed the car to make his first McLaren, in order to sell them in numbers, he handed it over to Elva to actually produce a run of cars.
And the Elva name?
And the Elva name, now wait a minute, because I think we're coming up now
we are.
To the checker, or has Mr...
No, I don't think he's taken the flag as yet.
He's not taken the flag, so he is going to... They're all now on their final lap.
Elva,
it goes. Yeah, that's right. Which is the Spanish for "it goes el va." But of course the problem was a little later on when someone in Detroit thought it was a great idea to call a car in Europe a Vauxhall or an Opel Nova, and in Spain they had to explain that perhaps that wasn't such a great idea to have a car that says it doesn't work.
I'm very pleased to see that the Turner's getting a bit of screen time here, and it's just blown up or something, so the Turner moves up a spot.
And here, I think, is disappearing under the bridge for the last time.
Coming towards
Headlights on, and a round of applause for a really nice job by Tom Smith. Young Tom Smith in the red MG. He's going to bring it home across the line, and that's it. You said give the car a nice pat.
And repeating the victory from the meeting a year ago, which was less than 10 months ago, I suppose.
Well done. Nice drive.
Not seen a keep at Libra before, but what a nice category of racing it is.
And it clearly all done in the right spirit. I'm not sure where our second place man is. There he is.
All coming to the line now. Yeah, there's the Jag.
And Kinsella is now right on the back of Rob Cull, but not making it. And so there is our result. Then Tom Smith very much in control in his red MG from Binfield in the E-Type, Cull in the TVR, and Kinsella resolved his issue. But Sandy Watson in the little open Lotus 11 has pipped poor old Fisher across the line, who had been going very nicely, but it just didn't quite work out at the end. I'm not sure what happened to Abacassis, and he dropped further and further and further down the field.
So 2 races down, Chris, 2 to go today, and then of course the full programme as you described coming up tomorrow. So
yes, well, next out,
and the Turner finished 8th in the end. I mean, interesting, they have very unusual rear suspension with a De Dion tube and torsion bars and all sorts of stuff. So or a Panhard rod and torsion bars, I should say.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
here's the Abacassis car finally coming across the line. He obviously had various problems.
Probably, couldn't get gears or something. So that's race 2 down. Coming up, we're coming forward almost 40 odd years. We're coming through to the Masters Endurance Legends race, Chris, where we're going to see cars that were racing Le Mans only 4 or 5 years ago.
Yes.
And some cracking machinery coming up in this. And
you see, sadly, there is an example of how we have to be at the moment. Tom Smith, a great win, but I'm afraid no chance to stop for a podium.
He would like to have stopped and, celebrated with his team and his dad. But it's not to be, but at least we're racing and we've got fans here.
Yes.
We are going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it has been, I know, for everybody in motorsport, Andrew, a really difficult time. And Motorsport UK has done an excellent job under the direction of David Richards and Hugh Chambers to try and persuade the government that doing something out in the open air.
Yes.
I mean, obviously a number of people had, put up with. There we have a nice...
Yeah, that's the top 10 for you.
The top 10. And as you can see, Sandy Watson did make it into 5th place in that Lotus 11 Le Mans with the bright red wheels. Neil Fisher slightly slipped back towards the end. Simon Cripps came forward quite well during that, and there is your man James Mason in his Turner Mark II.
I must go and find him afterwards and give him a pat on the back.
That's a rarity, and we run through the entire field there. The other E-Type, more MGBs, and the Wilmot family's Austin Healy in 13th place there, and Jonathan Abacassis in the end in the red and white striped car. Dropped all the way back down to 16th place, obviously with some sort of problem. And as you say, great to see an Elva Courier there, Porsche 911, and then at the end there, the Tucker family and Allison's and Mark Holmes' car, who all stopped very early on.
We should just mark this moment that obviously there was a Austin Healy Sprite there. One of the person that developed Sprites was John Sprinsel, great rally and race driver, who just passed away a couple of days ago in Hawaii, where he'd lived for many years.
Yes.
But Sprinsel was a big name in BMC cars back in the day, and a huge character as well. and was also involved with the special bodies for the Morgans that raced at Le Mans.
Yes.
SLR stands for Sprindle Lawrence Racing. Lawrence being Chris Lawrence. Yeah, and so we mourn the passing of the great Shaky Jake, as we call him. Yeah,
John Sprindle.
Yeah. And, while we're just talking on that theme, we just should also mark the passing of Ray Allen, who won the first ever Formula Ford race here at Brands Hatch, the first ever one, and a former soldier, and I think he was in the tank regiment, and then went on to be very quick in Formula 5000 cars, and one of the protégés of John Webb, who ran the circuit back then. He didn't actually own it. He worked for a big property company that owned it, and so sad to see Ray Allen go. I remember him; he was one of the first people to race in pink, because he was sponsored by Pink Stamps. Remember those green shield stamps? But there was a rival called Pink Stamps, and he raced particularly a McLaren M10B Formula 5000 car very well. And I saw him at Goodwood 4 or 5 years ago, and he was in great form then.
Well, it's very nice to see that and Brands Hatch and those who are coming to join us at Brands tomorrow live will enjoy the programme, and the MSV team have very well done.
I've seen a lot of race programmes, so they've done an outstanding job of this particular programme.
Have done a nice job, and there's a tribute page to Ray Allen, and while Andrew we're on tributes, it would be inappropriate to miss and note the passing in all the newspapers, many headlines this week, some regrettably for the wrong reasons, but we should pay tribute to Max Mosley, president of the FIA for many years, obviously Bernie Ecclestone's great partner in the era of Formula One which Masters represents today, in bringing it forward, founder of the March engineering team. But for me, the thing that really needed a lot more remembering, please, when thinking about Mr. Mosley, was not some of the family history or some of his own troubles, but the fact that as president of the FIA, he was the man who pushed the automotive manufacturers and Brussels as a regulator into the Euro NCAP safety system for road-going cars. And anybody who has had any sort of shunt in a road-going car in recent years, where the airbag worked and everything else worked, you should tip your hat to Max Mosley, because it wouldn't have happened without him. Next up, after our various tributes and important tributes, and very nice to see that Jonathan Palmer's team at MSV have included notes about Max Mosley and Ray Allen in the race programme. So it's time to move on, and the Masters have a wonderful grid. Again, a little bit affected, I think, in its total numbers by many absentees from France and Germany, who have many of these cars. But these are the Le Mans cars right up to 2014. You can run in this series. GT cars as well as prototypes. And Masters have assembled a nice grid. And one of the leading proponents in the series is Steve Tandy, a great collector and racer. And earlier on this afternoon, Andrew had a chance to talk to Steve Tandy.
So here is the favourite to win the Masters Endurance Legends race, these marvellous Le Mans cars. I'm with Steve Tandy, and he's definitely the man to beat. Steve, I think you wouldn't argue with that, would you?
Well, I never like to presume anything, Andrew, but I'm not even really too sure who's turning up this weekend, but I think that the entry is looking a little thin, which is a great pity, but that's all down to the dreaded COVID. None of the sort of great European competitors are here with the Peugeots or the Lola Aston Martin, which is a pity because this is a fantastic circuit, Grand Prix circuit. So we'll race against whoever turns up and we'll see what happens.
Steve, this Lola, probably the last Lola that was ever built, really. We see it dressed here in the colours of Dyson Racing, who raced it in the American Le Mans series. But this actual chassis was built up from a car that was actually owned by Mazda in America, and they raced it as a Mazda team. But you've had the thing completely refurbished.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, as you know, we own the Dyson Lola Mazda, which we raced in this series with a great degree of success in 2018 and 19. And at the end of 19, I asked Pete Chambers, who prepares all my cars, to actually look at building the car that Lola offered to customers in 2012, because these B1260s were offered with either the Toyota installation, which Rebellion took up, the Mazda, which Dyson's did, and the Judd, but nobody did, and that was largely because of the slightly excessive fuel consumption of the Judd engine. And so it wasn't a choice that was taken up by anybody, but I felt that it was a combo that would work really well in today's series. You know, just 40-minute races, fuel consumption is not so much of an issue, and so that's what we did. And we got Pete Weston, who was the original Dyson engineer, to help us with the design calculations, etc., etc. And Masters requested that we have it in a similar livery to Dyson, because period liveries are everything in this sort of racing. And there's the result.
Steve, is this your favourite car? Because in the past, we remember you racing the fabulous Nissan 90K, I think it was called, and that was a huge beast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've raced in Group C for probably 10 years with a variety of cars, but getting a lot older now, and to be quite honest, these cars are a lot easier to drive. You know, with Group C, you've got no traction control, no power steering, and they're heavy old girls. These are much easier to drive with power steering, traction control, which we don't really use, but the whole thing is far more drivable as a gentleman driver.
Paddle shift for an old bloke.
That's great, you know. I mean, as you know, I raced in British GTs for 3 or 4 years, and Lamborghini Super Trofeo, so well used to that sort of gearbox, and it just suits these cars down to the ground.
Steve, we'll be watching you out front.
Hopefully. Thank you.
Yes, well, Steve will start on pole position in that car, running the 16, which is always the Dyson number, and you know really well, Chris. I mean, he's a terrific West Countryman and a great character.
Yes, he certainly is, and you know, he's always had a great deal of interest in running in Masters, originally buying a Lola T70 Mark IIIB and running that well. He had a Jaguar E-Type as well. Then he decided to get into Group C cars as well. But during that time, Steve Tandy also decided that he ought to race some modern cars to see how they went. And he had a series, 2 years, I think, in Stefan Rattel's series in a McLaren. And as a result, he qualified for membership of the BRDC, which made him very happy indeed. And now he continues in historic racing. There are, in this race, some really fantastic cars. We just saw the Riley and Scott going through there, a great winner in IMSA racing in its day, and that's driven by Richard Cook. But as the grid begins to assemble here now, we have Steve Tandy there on pole, and alongside him Sean Lynn, father of Alex Lynn, they're very much a contemporary racer and a great star both of Le Mans and of Formula E, of course, Alex. Mark Higson, who used to race a March Formula One car with in Masters, one of those Formula One Marches, 761, and Mark Higson in third position in an Orica LMP2 car, just in front of David Bry's, his starting car number 65, car he shares with Alan Perdrick. They have a race again tomorrow, so that's why they David Bry's is in a Lola. That's the Lola closed car there, which you see alongside them, out on fourth place, and just behind them and just pulling onto the grid is Mike Newton in the MG Lola. Go on.
Yeah, for the, what was called a very lightweight 675 Big 4 LMP2, and this is a car that raced in period at Le Mans, and Mike has always held on to it. It's got 2 or 3 of the cars that were raced by MG and run by Ray Mallock, and Ray Mallock's team manager, old team manager Phil Barker is down there. Alan Jakeman, who prepared the car in period, is down there with it, and Mike, who in the I think mini camera business, something like that.
Yes.
And he still goes quickly. It's funny guy. Mike was one of those gentleman drivers. Tommy Erdos used to mainly race the car with him, and depending on
Andy Wallace drove with them as well.
Andy Wallace drove with him, yes. And sometimes Mike Newton can be only 1 or 2 seconds just slower than him around Le Mans. But, I think Phil told me once, it depends how much business is going. If Mike Newton had done a lot of business and been out to a lot of business lunches and stuff, he slowed down because his weight went up, and then he got himself together again. It's a nice little story. Now there, the car in front of your screen there is a very interesting machine. In fact, 5 of these cars have been built and bought. That's the BR, and that's an LMP2 car, but that is running the Nissan engine. Of course, in LMP2 these days, cars look just the same, but they have to run the Gibson engine. And these were cars designed by Paolo Catoni, who designed the Peugeot that won Le Mans and so on. And
SMP Racing, very much the Russian racing team.
And these are being run, they were bought by Bob Berridge, the guy who also bought that group of Peugeots from 12 years ago, the Le Mans cars, and Bob likes to deal in these things. Bob's just down there now, and the BR is for Boris Rostenberg, who is the Russian who funded the SMP Racing, because him and his brother own SMP Bank, and they also own a lot of oil pipelines and things like that. Well, that car was raced in period by Mika Alashin, who's Russian, who went on to race in IndyCar. Here you see the start grid, and Steve Tandy, Sean Lynn on the front row of the grid. Mark Higson is in 3rd place there
in the Orica,
and
it will be David Bryce starting this car.
And that's a very good. That's an Orica. There's a lot of those LMP Oricas around. That one was from the Thierry team. Was one of the top teams in the European Le Mans series.
And that car that says Chris Atkins and Greg Thornton is being driven in this race by Greg Thornton, who was himself a Masters Historic Formula 1 champion not so long ago in a JPS Lotus. Richard Cook there in car in 7th place on the grid. Richard is in the Riley and Scott Mark 3C. And Andrew, you've watched them racing those cars in their heyday in IMSA. The big open white car, which we'll see the safety car leading them round now, but that was an impressive car in its day, wasn't it? The Riley and Scott.
Riley and Scott. I mean, it's a huge company, Riley and Scott, these days. And Bob and Bill Riley, who worked with Mark Scott, who's actually been a mechanic for James Hunt back in the day.
That takes you
McLaren, the M23 we saw there, and he's not involved in the company anymore. It's now called Riley Engineering, but that's an absolute classic sort of sports car for the American Le Mans series. That's what's nice about this. I mean, they did race those cars at Le Mans also. Great big wing on the back of it. Look, that's the white car with the 2 purple stripes down the middle of it.
Then we have an LMP3 Ligier, which actually belongs to Ron Maiden, the president of Masters. And of course, another feature is as correctly in period, Andrew. We have some nice GT cars, and among those nice GT cars is Colin Payton is actually driving the 124, car number 124, the Mosler. But their Ferrari at the back, their 458 GT3 car driven by Colin Sauter, is 13th on the grid. Colin Payton in the Mosler was 14th on the grid. But I mean, also in there, you will see Richard Mines, very well-known racer, raced all sorts of cars, and he had a McLaren M23 Formula 1 car at one stage. And Richard Mines also had all the Beatrice Haas Lolas as well, those turbo cars. But he's in the aquamarine and black Aston Martin there.
There it is in the German.
Yes, the famous Vitaphone. Sponsorship colours of that period. Richard, I think, was the fastest GT car in a 1 minute 30.573 lap, which is a respectable lap time around here, when Steve Tandy was doing a 1:23. So the MSV grid is being formed up behind them. It will be also a rolling start.
Well, I should be surprised if there's much opposition to Tandy here, because he's a very competitive driver in a supercar, well prepared, and off they go towards Paddock Hill Bend, and Tandy certainly keeps to the inside there and defends well, and will then dive down the hill and will start to pull away, I suspect, and everybody else seems to have gone round there nicely. Lights blazing, look, and jockeying for positions. It's Mike Newton going a little bit wide in the LMP 675 Lola MG, driven in period by the likes of, Anthony Reid comes to mind.
Yes.
And I mean, there was a suggestion that formula, they could challenge the Audi R8s, but unfortunately were just too fragile back, 15, 18 years ago.
Yes.
And they were very quick, those LMP 675s. I mean, that's the weight, 675 kilos.
Well, they were indeed, and Rose, I mean, I was lucky enough to be involved at Lola at the time, and the factory cars in the green and black were very, very impressive. A Frank Durney, Ben Bowlby designed car. The AER little 2-litre turbo engine wasn't the most reliable. Just there on the Porsche, looking quite bold, is Marcus Jewell in that Porsche 996 RSR, very appropriate for the period.
What we didn't say, we've got 2 of the BRs in here, haven't we? We've got Sean Lynn. Have we not got a second one? I thought.
No,
there was a second one. Maybe that was a spare they had in the.
That was a spare in the garage, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, bringing a spare. Why not?
As I said, Bob Berry bought 5 of them.
Yes, that's right. Well, he is inclined to do that, but he also bought a bunch of Peugeots, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone having a little. They're moving quickly there.
Yeah. There's that Thierry. That, as I said, car very successfully in the LMP, in the European Le Mans series, because now they have to have a cockpit, they have to have an enclosed cockpit in LMP2, but they didn't originally, and there was a period when both raced together.
And that's Mike Furness, I think, is it not, in the Courage LC75?
Yeah. There's Mike Newton, I think he might be moving up.
Yeah, I think he's been a little bit held up there. What's happened to the Riley and Scott? I haven't seen where that big white car has gone with its big white wing.
I think it's still there, Chris.
Yeah, look, Mike Newton having a look.
He dropped a place, so he's trying to get that place back. So Tandy already 1.3 seconds in the lead from Sean, son of Alex Lynn. Father of Alison, I should say.
So I think what's showing on our scorecard as ATK Atkinson is in fact Thornton.
Yes.
It is Greg Thornton, as we were saying at the moment. Sorry, that was slightly confusing me. That's in car number 8, and they are currently lying, well, Greg Thornton is lying in 5th place. So the order is Tandy from Sean Lynn, from Mark Hidson, then it's David Bryce in the Lola, and then it comes to Mike Newton and Greg Thornton battling away. Car number 65. It's a good-looking car, that David Bryce's car.
It certainly is.
Lying in the 4th place. I was always very proud of the connection with Lola. They built beautiful cars, and Martin Birain, really the driving force behind the revival of the Mark from 1998 onwards. And we had a strong team of people there with us, people like Ben Bowlby and Frank Durney, of course, as well. And
of course, now that market, which was such a British market for so long, is ruled by the French.
Yes.
With 2 manufacturers, Orica and of course Ligier, based at Le Mans.
Ligier doing, and
then there's still a Dallara chassis as well. I think 4 manufacturers are allowed, aren't they? I'd never understood that. Why stop people building race cars for a category if they want to? They're going to lose money, hard luck. But, I just don't get it, really. I think that's probably what, to a degree, stopped the BRs, because they then moved on to LMP1 with the Russian backing, of course, and then in the WEC, and are now pulled out of that. Well, here it looks absolutely beautiful.
Tandy's car, and that's a proper handful too, isn't it? I mean, it is very nicely developed, but that is an extremely powerful car. He's just gone purple all sectors there. He's done a 1 minute 25.449, and that he is pulling away rapidly. But that is really a very, very special race car, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit, Andrew, then about the history of the car, in as much as it was, as you say, run by a very well-known American racing family, the Dysons.
Yeah, Rob Dyson, the father, raced Porsche 962s. Chris Dyson, his son, was part of the team. He now races in Trans Am Series very successfully, does Chris. And the Dyson business was called Thetford. And what did Thetford do?
I think they did cooling and radio. Did they not?
They actually made toilets for motorhomes and caravans.
Well, there you go.
Just going through. He's got through.
Well done.
That's a good battle going on with the
with
the
Mark
46.
Hickson there, and that.
A huge business, by the way. I mean, sort of dominated that market. Super bloke, Rob Dyson, huge enthusiast, and of course people like Guy Smith, Andy Wallace. These are the people racing. Johnny Merlin did a few races for them.
Famously for many years.
And James Weaver.
Yeah.
Weaver and Wallace were the big pairing for a long time, hugely successful. And
when Rob Dyson first backed James Weaver, they ran in IndyCar.
Yes, they did.
They ran, well, champ car as it was then.
Yeah.
But it's really good to see these Le Mans type cars. Oh, hello, we got a pit entry here.
Yeah, that's a problem, isn't it?
A little bit of a problem. But Mike Newton driving very nicely. The car Mark Hickson is driving here, which is qualified third and is running in 5th place now, is prepared by 9W Race Engineering, who also prepare Formula One cars down at Stockbridge in Hampshire. This is, as you were saying, the exterior car run very well by the TDS team, both in the European Le Mans Series and in the World Championship.
And Terrier, big in ice cream.
Big in ice cream.
Well, and food distribution in France,
right.
They're big in ice cream.
A French equivalent of Beach Tea, perhaps. Yeah. But it is lovely to see the MG Lola going so well there. Martin Bourrain was always very keen and always used to amuse me. You had the same trouble, I know, in the Le Mans commentary box. If you said MG Lola, he'd want you to say Lola MG. And then, of course, when they built those wonderful Aston Martin engine prototypes at Lola, 1 year at Le Mans, Martin made a special point of coming up to the commentary position about midnight in order to remind me I should be saying Lola Aston Martin rather than Aston Martin Lola, which was, of course, those wonderful cars in Gulf colours with the huge V12
But
engine.
usually in this championship we see one of those, don't we, with a
we
Belgian beer magnet in.
Yes, absolutely. And Christoph Dansenberg. Christoph Dansenberg.
He usually has a big battle with Tandy.
Is another one who couldn't make it here, sadly. Nice to see the Ferrari and the Mosler hard at it.
Mosler could be a road car. Martin Short was involved in those very successfully, of course, in the UK. Mosler raced mainly in the Grand Am series, as opposed to IMSA. There was 2 rival sports car groups in America at that time, which was kind of mad.
But Mosler did make and sell some cars, didn't they?
Yeah, road cars as well. There's a big Chevy engine in the back of it.
Nice to see this little Lola here, rather earlier Lola, this one, the B2K40 it was called.
Very successful they were.
I've got a feeling that I actually sold that car
to
the team Nighthawk Racing.
Well, it says on it, on the roll cage I saw.
Well, there you go.
Racing.
There's a wonderful man who was with Lola for many years, Nick Jordan, one of the great race engineers. Trying not to cut each other's nose off. And Nick and I used to beat the paths around the United States selling sports cars to people, and sold cars to Dyson as well. But that little car there had just the little, it just had the little 2-litre Nissan engine in it, didn't it? And they ran in what was called SR2.
SR2, yes.
That was the class, yes.
They had it. That was a Grand Am class, and he won the class at Daytona 24 with Andy Lally at the wheel, I remember.
And the Canadians won a class at Le Mans in SR2 as well. Anyway, he's finally managed to get past the Porsche.
I'm just trying to think the name of the lady driver who raced successfully in one of those. Certainly Liz Halliday raced a car like that, but it was a Venezuelan.
Yes.
Her name will come to me.
Milka Duno.
Milka Duno tried to qualify for Le Mans, the Indianapolis 500 a couple of times.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Venezuelan, that's right.
Yes.
And Andy Wallace shared a car with her in American racing for some time.
She was enhanced.
Yes. Moving on. Steve Tandy's still out in the lead.
Yeah, we would have expected a nice battle though between the Mosler and the Ferrari. Look at that, absolutely side by side.
The Ferrari being driven by Colin Sauter, and it's just a beautiful car. That the 458 GT3 car number 126. A, it looks right. B, it sounds absolutely fantastic. And of course, the 458 was a class winner at Le Mans again and again, up against Aston, Chevrolet, Porsche, BMW. That was a great heyday of the class, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
I think the little Courage has come back out again, hasn't it? that went into the pits. I think he's come back out again.
One thing we're missing that we often have in these races are cars from the LMPC category that rowers have raced a lot in America. Well, it started as obviously European Championship, didn't it? We don't have any of those today, but we often do.
We have one LMP3 Ligier in the form of Ron Maiden's own car, which he has just acquired. He told me all he's done with it is run it once. Oh dear, oh dear. Now I'm afraid we have definitely got a retirement there. I think that's Greg Thornton.
I think that is Greg's car, yeah.
And that's the car he was to share with Chris Atkinson tomorrow. So we hope we get it sorted so they can run tomorrow. This is a mini endurance race, as it should be. And we're 12 or so minutes into it.
Yeah, we're sort of a third of the way through at the moment.
And it's nice to see that now the little loader's decided to get on with it. I think he was feeling a bit trapped by the GT3 cars. Oh,
74. Wow. We wouldn't expect that, would we?
Now, why's he come in? Let's follow him down and just see what the issue is. That's Marcus Jewell, the car he was to share with Ben Klukas, the 996 RSR. Very nicely prepared car. Oh, he's got to stop and go.
Yeah.
He's got to stop and go.
Well, Ben Klukas, a professional driver with a long career. He was actually a Toyota factory driver for a while with the young driver scheme Toyota had.
Yes, indeed.
Brought on Ryan Briscoe, for instance.
Yeah.
Klukas was part of that. He's raced all over the world. He's been an Australian Formula 3 champion. He's raced in places like Japan. 4 or 5 seasons ago, he was racing in the touring car series for the factory Kia team in America. He's got a massive career. I think he's won the Silverstone 24 Hours Brick Car event.
Oh, really?
So he's a professional racing driver with a long career as Ben Klukas. But I'm not sure, he's not driving today. Maybe he's going to drive it tomorrow.
It's certainly Marcus Jewell today. And that's the nice thing about the format that Masters have given these cars. If you get, oh, no, please don't try and hang on to Steve through there.
Nice looking car, that motor, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, big Chevy motor in the back. Warren Mosler, the man who produced them. I'm going to say Martin Short, very successful with the Mosler. Bright green one, if you remember, racing in the UK.
Yes,
the Ferrari going through.
I'd forgotten, just what a huge wing that was on the back of it. And then if you notice, the rear wing is an Australian flag. I'm not sure if that is...
Lynn just going through in that...
now, Sean Lynn is now less than 6 seconds behind Steve Tandy. I'm not sure if Steve Tandy's slowed considerably.
I was thinking Steve's playing with him. He's just...
I suspect that there's an element of that, but Lynn has just done a 25.6 and Steve Tandy's just done a 27.3.
What were you doing in practice, Chris?
And Steve did a 123. Yeah. They both did a 123 in practice. Nice to see that little Lola.
Yeah.
And it is definitely, that was the paint scheme I recall with the US flag on it for
It was interesting because the team were well known, Root Racing, for running Porsches. And I do think that's who when Lally won at Daytona in the class, one of the first, 6 or 7 watches he's won. Great character, Andy Lally, by the way. I think that's a car. I'm not 100% sure, but it was certainly a sister car that built at a similar time. That Lola still looks great, doesn't it?
And he's not hanging around.
Interesting to hear him say that he'd brought Pete Weston in to help him engineer the car, because in the days of heyday of Dyson Racing, Pete was an absolute guru on the pit wall.
And in my time at Lola, Pete Weston was the factory engineer, and he was very much Ben's, if you like, number 2 on the aero. He's a really, really good race engineer, and was always much sought after by the teams who sold the cars to.
But very interesting that Steve Tandy said that he chose to put the Judd engine in, which was offered to the car, but nobody actually took up at the time because of the fuel consumption. You heard him say that. That particular, he has got a Dyson car, which is for sale, by the way. But this particular car was built up from the tub. Mazda had a program.
Yes.
am I right that they ran diesel engines in them?
No, they didn't.
No.
They ran the full Mazda race engine there, which is a really quick
AER
motor.
engine?
Yeah, AER engine.
Well, Chris, I seem to remember the first season with those two sort of deep purpley coloured cars. They did run a diesel motor.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it wasn't very successful.
It was not very successful.
No, I'm sure I'm right on that. I'll just have a quick look.
Mazda have announced, haven't they, that they won't be carrying on with their IMSA program next year, which is a real blow to the IMSA series.
Yeah.
And now, are we going to have a driver swap? Maybe we are going to have a driver swap.
Yeah, maybe we are.
Oh, well, that'd be...
We must have a window then, haven't we?
Yes, I will. You keep going. I'll,
I'll
follow my instructions to find out if we have...
So I think this Legends races usually do have a pit stop, don't they? But with the programme being shortened, we weren't absolutely sure that was going to happen.
Well, I've also now got news from the pit lane that Greg Thornton in the Orica 09, the number 8 car, has... as we saw, he came into the pits, went out again. No, he had an engine misfire.
Oh, did he? Right,
and they have now retired the car.
Oh, right, okay.
But what we were wondering was...
Well, we're sort of halfway through, so we think this might be a time.
Yeah, this might be a moment. And if you're not changing, what masters normally do in endurance races, if you're not changing, you just have to sit in the pits.
Somebody holds a iPhone, probably, or a stopwatch.
That's right.
Yeah. So, well,
I mean,
on the face of it, Sean Lynn is keeping you honest. There was a nice shot in the pits, and just reaching into the cockpit there of the BR and the Simpson team running that particular car. I thought they were all run by Berridge's BBM organisation. There's Mike Newton, and still in a battle with the ex-Thierry LMP open top car.
Mark Higson was ran in Masters Formula One for a number of years and got quicker and quicker and enjoyed the car very much. And actually his highlight before he sold the car was it was the first car run by Williams.
Oh, big shunt there with the motor.
Dear,
hard into the barrier there. I think that must be Paddock Hill Bend coming down the hill, isn't it? And that's going to bring out more than a yellow flag, I would have thought.
I think that's going to be.
And of course, if you're on it, you're going to get in the pits now.
Yes.
You've got to get in the pits now.
Now, that is a great shame because that car, Colin Payton driving that car, was going very nicely. I'm not sure if we be able to see where we went there, but Moser very much, I'm afraid, and that's on the outskirts, on the outside of...
there he is. He's climbing out. Yeah. And walks away from it, quite a bit of damage.
Yeah, that, as they say, that's not going to polish out very easily, is it?
No, it wasn't where I thought it was, Chris, was it?
It is. It's on the outskirts of Clearways.
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah.
It's on the outside of Clearways.
A bit further down from where they normally go in, I think.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's the MSVR offices
safety car coming out.
Yes.
No, I thought he was going into Pallet, but he's not.
And let's just see what Sean Lynn is doing here. He's going to do a time stop.
Yeah.
So they'll just check the tyres. If you're not doing a driver change, he'll probably want some fresh air in there.
Tandy's doing another lap.
The Riley and Scott is also having his pit stop. And in fact, the smart thing to do is, if you've got the safety car out, is exactly as you said, Andrew, proper endurance technique. There is the Riley and Scott.
Guy Smith's name on the side of that. Robbie Gordon.
And Scott Sharp.
Scott.
That was a strong driving team, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is yellow flag all the way round under the safety car. And it will take a little while because that car is the Mosler that is embedded, I'm afraid, in the barriers at the outside of Clearways, just in front of the MSVR offices, is going to take a little time to move, I think, because you've got to get the tow vehicle right into there. So the Riley and Scott, I see, all sorts of connections for me there, Andrew, says that's Elan Power, which was Don Paynos's engine company, set up because he got fed up with buying other people's products to run in the famous front-engined Paynos Batmobiles. And so Don Paynos, in the way he always would, decided he was going to do it his way. And he set up a Sean Lynn being given the start it up signal.
And loud or what, those Paynoses?
Well, and those engines were really loud. The Riley and Scott has left the pit lane. Sean Lynn has left the pit lane. Mike Newton and the Ron Maiden LMP3 car have not yet had their pit stops. And Richard Mines has come in for his stop in the Aston Martin GT car, which is leading the GT class and is in fact in 6th place overall at the moment. So the only cars we've lost in the race so far are Colin Payton in the Mosler, which is in the wall, hence the need for the safety car we have at the moment, and Greg Thornton in the Courage, in the Orica 09 car, which has retired with a misfire.
Just talking about the Riley and Scott, they did win the Daytona 24 Hours with Dyson Racing back in 1999 with the EFR, Elliot Forbes Robinson, Butch Leitzinger and Andy Wallace at the wheel, and that was the MK3, but this is MK3C, and I think that might be a slightly later, it's definitely
later car.
Only 2 or 3 years later car. I think the design was effectively the same. So they have got a good history, the Riley and Scott there, and so nice to see it. And I understand another one. Speaking to Nigel Greensill at Donington, and I think he said they've just rebuilt one.
Andrew, I'm just wondering here. The pace car has just gone out but he's not picked up the leader. And as a result, we're going to get a slightly scrambled restart, I think.
See, Tandy is in the pits, and he's shown as third. I don't think has Mike Newton not been in yet, and Lynn?
Lynn's been in,
well, he's
but
not
Mike
showing
Newton
on
hasn't.
there, is he? On our timing scoring, it's showing Lynn having not. Oh, yes, he's been. He's out lap. Yes, he's been in.
He's on his out lap.
As we said,
and Tandy is still in the pits.
I think Tandy might have got the strategy a bit wrong here.
Yes, and he is due to start again. Mines has just left in the Aston Martin, and that's a nice shot. Tandy, away he goes. But I think now, because the field is, which is the purpose of the safety car, is bunching up behind the safety car, I think if Lynn's up there, and that's
Tandy will have been
that's not him,
won't he?
Yes.
So we should see a bit of excitement for the. I mean, we got 16 minutes left.
That's Bryce's Lola at the back of this lot. Ron Maiden's LMP3 car is having its pit stop now.
So Tandy's back on course.
Yeah.
There is this.
That's the Ligier. That's the LMP3 Ligier.
I think that car is still current. I think you can still race one of those.
Absolutely, you can.
LMP3 are doing really well at the moment, particularly in the States.
And all around Europe. I mean, it's been a huge success for Ligier. Ligier told me they've sold 110 LMP3 cars around the world.
Wow. All with Nissan engine.
And of course, they have a deal in the States also for their Formula 3, is it called, car?
Yeah, they bought,
which is a joint venture with the American.
They bought the
chassis manufacturer. Crawford. Thank you very much.
Yeah, lovely family, and actually New Zealanders.
But they've been in the States forever.
Max Crawford.
Been
there's Mike.
Now Mike Newton, who was lying in second position, is having his compulsory pit stop now, and I think there's going to be, as you say, Andrew, a bit of a shake-up now because everyone's going to have to catch up. Steve Tandy is shown as, of course, now being on his outlap from the pit stop in third place. And now he's being shown as in second place, of course, because Mike Newton is holding the pit lane. But Steve is going to have to overtake Sean Lynn. To repeat, Sean Lynn, a noted historic racer and collector. I mean, he has, among other things, a proper Gulf Porsche 917, a proper Ferrari 512M. He has...
must have made a bit of money in the city, I would think.
Yeah, he did. And but his son, Alex, of course, made his own career in motorsport, was the Williams test driver is now...
Well, I reported on the year when he was racing the European Formula 3 Championship race, so he didn't win it, but...
and he's a Jaguar F3 racer, FE racer, I'm trying to say. He's been an Aston Martin factory Le Mans driver and done the entire World Championship in a top team.
And a very engaging character as well.
He's a really... And interestingly, Motorsport magazine list him as one of the up-and-coming young all-rounders in the world of modern motorsport. So we are going to do another lap behind the safety car, but I think the motor's been moved, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, pleased to see the driver walk away. There's the... where is Tandy in the crocodile, though?
Well, I mean, I think...
That's the thing.
He's right.
He's got to overtake a lot of people.
He's going to have to overtake a lot of people.
But Sean and Lynn have managed to... So the clock's ticking away, isn't it?
Yeah.
So a bit of a cliffhanger here that we didn't expect. And just that Mosler causing it, of course.
There's the Riley and Scott.
Yeah.
Now the Moser is safely behind the barrier. Well done, the marshals. Because it's really hard when someone's actually in the barrier like that and to get it back out of the way. And there's a very disconsolate driver just standing there on the outside, being asked some questions by some enthusiastic fans, like, "Why did you do that?"
Well, you go and try and do it, mate, because it's not easy.
It never makes a race driver happy. He was going very nicely, wasn't he? But that's also deprived our friends in the Ferrari 458, Colin Sauter, of the opportunity to have somebody to race with. He's now right back up behind. Or is he a lap behind Richard Mines? No, they're both a lap behind the overall leader.
Just seeing that BMW safety car going round, didn't I read that one of them, was it the one from Cadwell Park or something, actually stolen?
Yes.
I mean, you're not going to look anonymous in it, are you?
Well, that's right. I mean, you do sometimes wonder how bright people are. Cadwell Park, the lovely MSV-owned circuit in Lincolnshire's Wolds district, and it's proper rural country, and there aren't many cars painted bright purple and white with a flashing bar on the roof. And for someone to have nicked it, I think they got it back quite quickly.
I think they did, didn't they? Yeah.
Lights are out on the safety car.
Where Tandy is, you see.
Lights are out on the safety car. The safety car's going back in.
Again.
Stand by. We're going to go back going racing again. And everybody is... now, I think Tandy's right at the back of that lot, Andrew, don't you?
Back of the train, and let's see how quickly it can cut through it.
That's a little embarrassing for the 24 car there. Mike Furness being overtaken under braking into Paddock Hill Bend.
Let's see where the 16 is.
Now, you see, we're now things are beginning to shake out. And where is Mike Newton as well in the lineup here? Now, a lot of these cars have been lapped, so...
now just Tandy at the back of that group, the 23 car brief excursion onto the grass there with...
and where
Watts at the wheel.
Is that Tandy there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's on the inside.
Yeah, he's got to get past the
Aston Martin.
Yeah, which sounds absolutely glorious. I saw it running in practice this morning. Oh, it makes a noise.
And there's Lynn, and there is your leader on the inside there with the dark blue nose. Spoke there, number 27.
So he's got Tandy right behind. Look.
Well, where is Tandy then?
Right
now?
behind him.
Oh yes, so he is. Excellent.
So just the way they were both almost together in the train as it happened. But obviously Lynn jumped Tandy in the pit stops. But actually in the end, I suspect that Steve will be doing it for Somerset, and we go diving through very quickly.
Now we've got.
I mean, there's so much traffic around.
He's got
10 minutes left. He's just got to bide his time a little bit. Let them sort themselves out.
And Sean Lynn has dived down the inside of David Bryce, but in a very comparable car. And now they've got the much slower little baby old Lola. And Tandy's done him. Done him in the traffic.
Absolutely.
Sean Lynn went the wrong way up against the pit wall, got held up, unwittingly held up by the little Lola SR2 car, and that's given Tandy a chance. Oh, but Lynn's back on him. He's back on him, and he's now being held up. Tandy relatively being held up by the David Bryce Lola, the BO980. And now he's got past him, and Lynn's got to do the same thing. But Lynn is in the same sort of power category as the Lola. Both LMP2 cars of the period. And so he's got to squeeze past him on the way up to Hawthorns. and on to the Derek Minter Straight, which isn't very, and so on to Dingle Dell, Sheen Curve, and the famous Stirlings, and the return back. There we go, Dingle Dell up to Sheen Curve, and there he is down the inside. Oh, the Porsche squeezed him out. He didn't mean to, but he didn't have anywhere to go. Well, I tell you what, Andrew, the safety car was very unfortunate for the Mosler, but it certainly brought the field back together, didn't it?
Certainly did. And sight and sounds of these Le Mans cars, absolutely great as a spectator here to see these.
So much grip when you see what you can do down through Paddock Hill Bend. And Sean Lynn certainly knows how to drive one of these things, but the aero effect, he was just saying earlier on when we were chatting, it is dramatic. I mean, he just says it's a wonderful thing to drive. So the order then is now shaken back out again after the safety car period. Steve Tandy leads from Sean Lynn. Mike Newton in the white, blue and red MG Lola is in third place, car number 25, as it was in period, from Mark Hickson in a much newer Orica, car 46 in fourth place. And then we have the Ron Maiden Craig Davis car. I think now with Craig Davis at the wheel, you're looking at that car exactly now, car number 52, which is the LMP3 Ligier, the JSP3 car, being driven very vigorously indeed, and about to be lapped.
This car, with the Dyson team back in the year it was built, 2012, had a huge battle with the Greg Pickett's Muscle Milk team with the ARX, which usually beat them actually.
Yes,
and
indeed.
it was they ran two cars most of the time, the 16 and the 20, and 16 was usually Chris Dyson and Guy Smith at the wheel. That's how this would have run. But as we heard in the interview, they actually ran the AER engine, which was sometimes badged as a Mazda.
Yeah, there we are.
Yeah.
Yes. AER.
A Mazda, but that particular chassis had, I'm sure it had a Mazda diesel in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they looked magnificent, but the engine just didn't make enough horsepower. Run by the Speed Source organisation. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And AER, of course, still very much in business there in Essex. And in fact, Nick Jordan, who I was talking about earlier, famous Lola engineer, is still doing some work there. I spoke to him recently on the occasion of his 70th birthday.
Excellent. So, but the Dyson team that year, 2012, they did win the Grand Prix of Baltimore, which is on the streets of Baltimore.
Oh, yes.
And they ran one at Road America as well, where they had a fantastic battle and won literally by about 4 inches against the Greg Pickett car, which I think had Lucas Lure driving for them. I didn't know the main driver, but great to see these cars still getting a lot of life, you know, still racing so nicely.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, I do think, Andrew, that it was very astute of the Masters team, Ron Maiden and Rachel Bailey, to have, if you like, spotted the opportunity that there are a lot of cars, and of course, they'll never ever say this, safer in theory, owing to carbon tubs, lots of bodywork and everything else, than putting people in open formula cars.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys who have the time now and the money to want to go top level racing in historics can see the advantage of doing this sort of rather than the Formula One. And both in Europe and in the United States there are obviously a lot of cars, because there's never anything so obsolete as a 5 or 6 year old car.
No, absolutely right.
It's long before it's become historic. It's obsolete, but as a result of Masters creating this, there's a lot of interest building up. As we said, I mean, the grid could have been 10 cars stronger if everyone had been able to come from Europe, of course.
Yes.
But later on in the year, I think people will see just how strong the Masters Endurance Legends grid can be, and people want to race it. And you and I, and everybody else who loves Le Mans, love seeing these cars out there.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. And there's a bit more variety back then. You know, the authorities have sort of say, oh, you've got, you know, LMP2, you've got to run the Gibson engine, or you can only have 4 manufacturers, as I said earlier, building that chassis and so on.
And of course now, maybe the top level of current endurance racing is going to change and develop with the arrival of the hypercars. I see Glickenhaus is meant to be running next time out. And Toyota, as usual, have made their wonderful investment and committed to a series, as they always do. I would expect that in a couple of years' time, perhaps, by the time Le Mans is celebrating its 100th anniversary, there will be a really wonderful selection of hypercars and these new classes. Because of course the GT. Oh, he spun it!
Oh no!
He spun it, and that's frightened himself.
He's going to pick it up, though.
Goes, well, he should be able to pick it up then.
I think he's lost the engine.
Mark Higson, I think, may not have kept the clutch depressed there.
He's got
Is
it
he
going
underway again?
now,
Oh, well done, that man. Well, he's pressed all the right buttons.
Yeah, I remember seeing him race March 761. I think he's got in Masters.
Yes, well, he had that car
for a long time,
and he sold it, but he only sold it after it had appeared at the launch of the famous Williams documentary film in London's West End.
It was a
big launch night for it, and because the car that Mark used to own, this Mark Higson who we're looking at now, was the original Frank Williams Racing Mark 761.
Yeah, after Frank split from Walter Wolff, and so they
started again.
Patrick Neve was the driver, the Belgian.
And Patrick Head fiddled with the march a little bit and made it work again, didn't he?
And then he designed the Williams FW06 that I launched in what had been a carpet warehouse with about 25 people there. But we did have visuals there, and the pictures went around the world. And that was pre-ground effects, but it was a supercar FW06.
Oh yes, indeed it was. There you see, ladies and gentlemen, you are able to hear stories from the era that Masters historic Formula One cars is all about, because Andrew was actually there, there at the press conferences and there with the television camera in his day.
A later Williams we launched in the factory. We had a smoke machine and an ice machine, and when we did the rehearsal, it was a bit underwhelming. So I told the boys running it to crank it up a bit. When we did the actual launch, the garage, it was in a workshop, and you pulled on a chain and the garage door came up, and all you could see was the smoke and the ice, whatever, and Terry Boutsen and Riccardo Patrese literally came out of this smoke trying to sort of brush it out of their face with their arms, and then the crowd couldn't see it because all this smoke and stuff drifted into the audience. It's all in the book, coming out in October.
Andrew Marriott's Tales from the Grid and Tales from the Great History of Racing. Here we go. I think this is on his last lap now, don't you? There's 1 minute left to run in this race. Well, if he times himself, or he may have to do another lap. Steve Tandy now back with a 2-3 seconds, not much more than that.
No.
Over here, the second car, Alex Lynn. Alex Lynn, I said.
We always do that, don't we?
Fathers and sons.
What time did he do, Chris, in quality? What was his pole?
123 almost flat, and he's just done a 123.4.
Yeah,
so he's.
It shows how much he's on it, doesn't he?
Steve wanted to catch up again, didn't he? He's 40 seconds to go. He's going to have to do another lap. We are on the final lap, ladies and gentlemen, of this 40-minute Masters Endurance Legends race, which has allowed us to see some of the fascinating Le Mans and American sports car, IMSA, race cars of the last decade.
Steve, no spring chicken, is he? I think is he in his 60s, I think?
I think he is, and he's driving better than ever, and he really loves these cars. And, you know, the full aero, I tell you what, Sean Lynn is closing in on him to a considerable extent. What was 2 seconds is now 100 metres.
Wow. Well, has he got a problem? Is he playing to the crowd a bit?
Well, presumably he's on. he's on the radio to Pete, who prepares his cars so nicely.
Yeah. So Sean, of course, has been racing that Peugeot as well from 12 years ago, hasn't he?
Indeed. And Sean also has got himself a Le Mans Bentley, the proper 2002 car, which he bought when Bentley decided to sell off their collection.
Oh yes, he raced it onto the Classic, didn't he?
He raced it at Silverstone, and that's a fabulous car. So here we have Steve Tandy coming up to the line, but it's...
this is a...
Sean Lynn is now just 50 metres behind.
No, it doesn't look like it, does he?
And Steve Tandy, I think, is going to make it to the line. But that's a very nice finish.
Yeah.
A fascinating collection of cars. I hope you've enjoyed that. Fastest lap by Sean Lynn, 1:23.462. And that is faster than he went in qualifying by a little margin. So Sean Lynn showing he's no mug, very nicely driven.
Yep.
He's obviously been listening to his sons, who are both professional racers now, telling Dad what to do.
Yeah.
Mike Newton is due to cross the line in what should be
third place,
a sensible
which
third
he'll be
place.
Very happy with that, won't he?
And Mark Hickson has crossed the line.
Yeah.
So what has happened to Mike Newton, who has not crossed the line, I'm sorry to say? What's happened to him then?
No.
The little Ligier's come across the line. That's David Bryce in the Lola.
Was that Newton just then?
But he's not showing as having crossed the line. We're now waiting for the winner of the GT class. There, coming across the line, Richard Mines in the Aston Martin, and he has held off Richard Cook, who was having, I think, very much an early run for him in the big and very powerful Riley and Scott.
So it's showing Newton a lap down. So was everybody lapped?
All right, he's just, thank you very much.
Now, that's
he crosses the line, and he is allowed to be third. Sorry, I thought we must have lost him.
He wasn't lapped.
He wasn't lapped.
No,
he was the last unlapped car, and that's why he was so much
excellent result from Mike Newton. And flashing the lights by Sean Lynn. And one race to go this afternoon.
We have got something really exciting for you.
Certainly have.
What a wonderful afternoon of contrast, Andrew. We went from carbon fibre McLaren MP4 ones to MGBs to the this race, and I think we're about to see the full results here, which will show us. So Steve Tandy then 26 laps in his 40 minutes, including some very quick laps in the 1:23s from Sean Lynn. Mike Newton in the car he's owned since he paid for it to be built in the first place. Ron Maiden and Craig Davis in the Ligier LMP3 car. Mark Hickson does make it across the line despite his spin. And David B is D for Bryce, B-R-I-S-E, in the Lola B090, a nice car. Richard Mines wins the GT class. Richard Cook gets to the finish in the Riley and Scott Mark 3C. Colin Sauter in that Ferrari, beautiful Ferrari. And Simon Watts in the little Lola SR2 car in 10th place. Mike Furness in 11th, and that was Marcus Jewell this time out in the Porsche 996, which Ben Klukas will drive, we understand, tomorrow. Colin Payton in the Moser, as we know, sadly in the wall, and Greg Thornton and Chris Atkinson, where it was Greg Thornton driving the car, and went out very early in the Orica. So there we are, a nice result, some very, very pretty cars out on track.
Oh, don't push it out there.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Collected by the winner.
Very near. No, it's David Bryce's car in the other Lola. But they're all saying, no, well, you made me stall now, and I can't get round the corner. But Andrew, by way of contrast from this, I was about to say, we're now moving on to the Masters pre-66 touring cars.
We'll have a massive grid coming up.
We'll have some time to think about that, and tell you about that just while we enjoy this. The Masters and MSV racing team moving things along very swiftly in the course of today. This next race, the Masters Pre-66 touring cars, due to start at 5:20, and I should imagine that we'll be able to get that timing pretty much underway as we would wish.
One of the competitors in this will be Andrew Jordan, 2013 British Touring Car Champion, but now
Very much a preparer, builder, and a historic racer.
Yeah,
he's really enjoying
everything
it,
from
isn't
the Vermilion to the Daytona Cobra we'll see tomorrow, but in a Lotus Cortina today. And Steve Soper on the pole position in this with the Henry Mann-owned Mustang in the famous red and gold colours. And I think in just a few minutes we'll be hearing from Steve. I spoke to him in the pit lane this morning, and some other very impressive lineups here as well, Chris. So it's going to be pretty close battle, I would have thought. And Tiffany Dell taking part in this. I believe this race will have a pit stop with the window, and some people will change drivers and others won't. Another big name from the past taking part in this is Dave Coyne, former Formula Ford Festival winner at the age of 32. You remember, he had a career in Formula 3, German Formula 3 in particular before that, and a man who got very close to Formula 1 a couple of times, once with the ill-starred Pacific team, and there was also a chance he might drive for Jordan at one stage, and then along came a man called Michael Schumacher, who
he wasn't bad.
Somebody was trying to negotiate for Dave to get that drive, but obviously money was going to change hands.
Yeah.
Dave had a supporter, and but in the end suddenly they had Schumacher available, so there you are.
At the far end of the shot we're looking at here, which is all the fine Brands Hatch Pritz, is the collecting area, and down in the collecting area is this 36 car field
squashed in
for Masters pre-66 touring cars. And as Andrew was saying, some well-known drivers, but really interesting. Lots of Minis, lots of Lotus Cortinas, the occasional BMW 1800 Tisa.
But
Mustang's a good thing to have, a number of Mustangs, and one or two real rarities, including Adrian Wilmot and Mark Farmer's wonderful Studebaker Lark Daytona. So it's a good mixed grid.
I mentioned Steve Soper, former factory BMW and a Ford racer, and I was able to speak to Steve, as I said this morning, and caught up with him just after he'd put in the fastest lap of practice.
Steve Soper, still fast after all these years, eh?
Yeah, getting older, but it's harder to be fast when you get old. But I still put a lot of effort into the car and myself, and so pole position, doesn't really count later on for the race. So we want to win the race, not just pole position, but it's a step in the right direction.
Obviously fans are used to seeing you racing BMWs, you've raced Lotus Cortinas, but having a good go in a Mustang.
Yeah, the last time the car was here was last year, and it's got the Mustang has a prancing horse on it, but it obviously thought the Armco at Surtees was a fence, and it tried to jump and actually cleared the Armco and did a lot of damage, so it's taken a long time to rebuild it, but it's finally back to normal, so which is good.
Steve, when you are a full-time professional driver with Ford and then BMW, obviously spent lots of time in the gym, and do you have still the same attitude?
Yeah, I don't know about the gym, but it's the same attitude. I want to be competitive, and we work very hard at being competitive with the car, the preparation. You've got to tick every box, the engine, the car, tyres, tick all the boxes, and then you're normally competitive. If you leave one box unticked, you're not.
And are you still enjoying it as much? I mean, it's a sort of different sort of racing, but maybe not so much pressure.
Yeah, not so much pressure, but I love it. I'd be bored stiff if I wasn't doing it.
Well, he's going to get a lot of pressure today from the Rob Fenn car. Rob Fenn, who lives right here in West Kingsdown in the Ford Mustang, driving with Jake Hill, of course, one of very much the stars of British Touring Car Championship racing these days is Jake. The car run by John Danby Racing, and certainly people will remember Jake's father, Simon Hill, was a good racer, raced out in America in the Barber Saab series, and a commentator as well over the years, and very good on the old PR for his son is Simon, because he sent me quite a lot of information. Not that I can get it all in, but the car owned by David Fenn. We'll see that. That will be the other car on the front row of the grid. And of course, Jake's been a winner in the VTCC recently, and it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. I think in the first BTCC round, did he get 3/3? Because obviously 3 races. I think that means he leads the championship at the moment. So we'll see how he gets on. But Simon, thanks very much. That information always very useful. And we're going to watch how your son, who you've worked so hard and championed for, see if he can beat Mr. Steve Soperman.
And that's right. And Steve will be sharing that car with Henry Mann, who is the son of the late and wonderful Alan Mann himself.
Yeah.
Hence the, as we were saying, the red and gold colours. But Alan Mann, when I were a lad, was absolutely the team manager for anything in Ford, and of course was responsible also also responsible for the wonderful, which I saw racing here, 1968 Ford F3L, which is the car, of course, Jim Clark should have been racing and was contracted to be racing, and instead was at Hockenheim on that bad day in April 1968.
I was there, Chris.
Yes, indeed.
Interestingly, Clark wanted to race the Formula 2 car. He preferred racing single-seaters on that Lotus 48. And interesting, we talked about Max Mosley earlier.
He was in that race
in
a
that race.
BT
My flatmate Chris Lambert was in the race also, running as a teammate with Max Mosley as an outfit that I put together.
The London International Racing.
London Racing Team. In those days, there was 40 people trying to get entries into these races.
Yes.
But we tried to give it some gravitas, so we just came up with this name. I plucked it out of the ether, really. London Racing Team, and in fact, Max didn't run very long. He then switched the car to being prepared by Frank Williams.
So we have a really wonderful series of memories here from Alan Mann as race team now. So that's the car on pole, and as you say, alongside, but a little bit just on the second row, a very strong team, Callum Lockie and Julian Thomas. We've got Marcus Jewell and Ben Klukas,
we just mentioned all about Ben
just
Klukas.
in the other race, and then I've jumped into something else. Craig Davis, the same, is on the third row.
He's very quick.
He's very quick. Craig Davis is in a Ford Mustang as well, also in red and gold colour. And here we have the grid, again a rolling start. That's Craig Davis on row 3 there. The unusually coloured gold and cream coloured car on the 4th row. That is a proper exciting piece of kit.
That's rare.
That is proper rare. That's the Studebaker Lark Daytona, I'm reasonably sure. Car number 132. Adrian Wilmot and Mark Farmer. I'm not sure we got the starting drivers on this one, but I'm sure that the timing and scoring will tell us in due course. We have a grid full of Cortinas, and the first Mini is some considerable way back down the grid. We'll be able to have a further look. So behind on row 5, Roy Alderslade in a Mike Jordan prepared car. Mark Sumpter, very well known, racing in Group C, among other things. That's
I'm selling a lot of Porsches down there in East Sussex. Through the Paragon organisation.
He's car number 77 in another Lotus Cortina, and that's a very fine lineup. A fantastic grid. Camera has left the grid.
Yeah, look at it. Look at that lot.
Look at that. And where is the first Mini? Yes, some way back. As you can see, a mass of Minis. You're going to see Minis also racing tomorrow in their own dedicated race. Look out for American Muscle against British Handling. I think
that
it's probably
Studebaker is quite something. It had a win in Goodwood, didn't it? That particular car, surprising quite a lot of people.
Here we go. We have our grid here. And that Studebaker is, Andrew, go on, tell us more. I mean, it's a wonderful car.
Yeah, so I think they built very few of them. They also built them in Australia, and I think they raced in the Bathurst.
As Studebakers or as Holdens?
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? I'm not sure, to be honest, but they certainly raced in Australia. And also there's Dave Coyne. That
8th on the grid, fantastic.
And Wilmot and Farmer, that's the Studebaker we were talking about. Adrian Wilmot, former Spanish GT champion. Roy Alderslade, who had a very good result in the Cobra at Donington a few weeks ago, together with Andrew Jordan, and finished second in that big race there. Mark Sumter, we just
Marco
mentioned.
Attard,
Yeah.
Great sponsor of
with Tom
the,
Ingram, another BTCC driver.
With Tom Ingram, absolutely.
yeah,
and Marco Attard, the owner of the Calais wine store.
Yes,
and
indeed.
a great sponsor of British touring cars.
Yes, and then we're going through here.
Paddy Shovelin there in 14th place.
Yeah, he's a big property developer, isn't he, Paddy?
Yeah,
He
indeed.
builds student accommodation. Jason Minshaw.
Very much Mr. Demon Tweaks nowadays.
Yes.
Richard Dutton there in 20th place. Richard, one of the biggest team owner and operators in junior single-seater racing in Britain and Europe.
In 2012, they ran 23 drivers in 6 different race series.
Wow.
They don't do that anymore quite, but Richard Dutton's a great character as well.
22nd on the grid, someone called Tiff Dell, which name will be familiar to many. It's lovely to see Tiff out here enjoying himself. He's got a couple of drives this weekend.
Yeah, he's racing with John Spears, who got an interesting story, and he represented England in croquet. Now there's a rare fact for you.
That's a proper rare fact, and there can't be many championship winning croquet players who are currently racing in touring cars.
He runs a company called Best Investment, and had a lot of success in the city as John Spears. Really nice man. Had a good chat with him this morning.
That's Phil Hall on 31st, and he's been out racing a Formula One car.
So,
that's the one that stopped, sadly. And as we get towards the back of the grid, Peter Ratcliffe, legends in time.
Another big name there, Nigel Greenstall, of course.
Yes.
Races so many different cars and runs a fleet of those VW Fun Cup cars.
Nigel also an extremely good driver coach.
Yes.
And he's very good at working with owners of historic cars.
He's obviously had a problem because he's right at the back.
Yeah,
so
no, it must have been.
There's that gold and white Studebaker.
Yes.
And just trying to remember who.
It's nice to see, Andrew, now, isn't it, that people are painting their Cortinas different colours. Not all of them trying to pretend to be Jim Clark.
Or pretending to be an Alan Mann car, of course.
Yes, that's
another thing they do.
Yes. But this is a proper grid, and there, the red car there, I'm trying to make sure we've covered everybody. I see Mark Hales is sharing with Alan Ross Jones. Mark Hales, very well-known British journalist, covered motorsport for many years.
Worked very closely with Nick Mason. Did a marvellous sport with Nick Mason, having driven all his cars.
Yes, that's right indeed, and been lucky enough to race.
His other passion is flying boats.
Yes, well, he's always liked an aeroplane.
Yeah.
We've got a Galaxy out there as well, haven't we? Or is it a Falcon?
Or is it a Falcon?
I think it's a Falcon.
Galaxy.
People used to race. Yes, there we are. Chris Clarkson and David Smithers in a Ford Falcon Sprint. Look out for that car, number 73. Those two have been racing cars with Masters for 15 years now.
Yeah, Falcons also were a rally car briefly. Can you
There's a
mention
Falcon. The black car there is the Julian Thomas Callum Lockie Falcon. Very nicely prepared. Julian Thomas likes his cars to be black. The Cobra you will see in Gentleman Drivers tomorrow. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow for a full day of racing from what is meant to be a sunny Brands Hatch tomorrow.
I'm sure it will be, Chris.
Have to watch with us on this live stream. Please don't try and come to Brands Hatch, we are asked to point out, unless you already have a ticket, because of the government limits on the numbers, and we are fully sold out. Here we go, coming up to the line then, another Masters rolling start. The pace car will pull off into the pit lane, and it will be Soper against, we think, Fenn, or is Jake Hill driving it?
We're not sure who's starting it.
Here we go. And in a mighty roar that comes through our commentary position. Lots of American V8 muscle and lots of British twin cam.
Yeah, well, we don't know if it's Soper or Mann starting either, do we? Have we got that information yet? We're probably going to come through in a moment. And maybe timing and scoring, no.
The Studebaker's lost out big
about
time.
5 Lotus Cortinas all side by side.
Yes, giving him a bit of a Actually, he's got a problem because he's dropping back and dropping back and dropping back.
2 Mustangs together at the front, though.
And the first of the minis there, the two red minis and mixing it in there.
Yeah,
In Brands Hatch, very much a mini track if you can. There really isn't a lot of room there at the moment.
I think I saw Davis diving through as well and picking up a spot. Great American grunt V8 noise there.
Yes, so we got 5 big V8s in the front runners there.
Yeah.
Car number 9, that is Craig Davis there in the red and gold one between the two. The stripy one, and then really is, and that's I think that's the Jewel and Klukas car.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Hard to see from where we were, but I think that's right. He really has set off at a great lick, haven't they?
Yeah.
So the American Muscle at the moment, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, before we come to the first of the Cortinas.
That was a bit like that in period, really.
That's a proper 6 Cortinas. Oh my Lord! Look at this, Andrew, as they come down into clearways for the first time.
Where's the first mini? Look. Getting stuck in.
Yes, the Studebaker, I'm afraid, has had a rotten first lap and dropped way down the field. But look at this, it is all going to get very hectic for a while. 40 leads number 4, and so that's the Letts family, Alan and Jeffrey, in the number 40 car. And in car number 4 is, I suspect, Tom Ingram rather than Marco Attard at the moment.
I would have thought so.
Yes, that's right. Giving it plenty. Mark Sumter in the pale blue, number 77, and in 34 is Sean Balfe. Sean Balfe himself, a regular British GT racer and competitive in many different classes. Car 333 is Nick Padmore, in noted historic racer and the fastest man ever round Goodwood, and he is the first of the minis. Nick Padmore in the red mini with the car 33 with the number 333 on the side.
Ingram, a former runner-up in the British Touring Car Championship all those years with Toyota, but now racing Hyundai this season. And Tom really enjoys this historic racing as well. And all the cars so different, but super competitive, of course, as you would expect. Well, we're seeing in the timing and scoring here, it says stop, so unfed, so maybe it's.
Yeah, I think we have got.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Soper in the car to begin with.
Oh dear. Lotus Cortina pulling off.
I'm afraid we're going to have trouble identifying that car for you, because there are about 6 Lotus Cortinas in that colour.
In a bit, won't
we'll pick that up in a minute.
Yeah, it's not. It could be the Letts car, actually. That.
Yeah. Well, he's got up and walked away.
Yeah, I think that's the Jeffrey Letts car that has stopped.
Now, I don't know if 192 there is being driven by Callum Lockie at the moment, or whether that is being driven by Julian Thomas. But my goodness me, that Falcon drifting its way round Druids. Suddenly those rear tyres look very narrow, don't they?
They do,
when they're carrying that much horsepower.
Well, I was around, because I've got a bit of track record, when these American cars first came into what was called the British Saloon Car Championship, because until then they were dominated by Jaguars.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. 3.2 or 3.8 Mark II Jaguars were the car to beat, and suddenly these.
Dan Gurney appeared.
Yeah, in the Galaxy originally, huge, great Galaxy, and then obviously subsequently mainly the Falcons actually came along.
Well, the Falcons were brought over to Europe, weren't they, to compete in a very unlikely way in the Monte Carlo
Rally. Pussy Lungfelt was one of the star drivers, I seem to remember, and they had special lightweight panels on them and were homologated that way. Well, I think they look absolutely mighty, don't you? I love the shape. Look at that, hanging the tail out, dabbing the brakes, and getting all out of shape. What a cracking race this is. But,
Callum Lockie, I think you'll find that is at the wheel there. And he and the owner, Julian Thomas, have come together in a number of Masters Series to make a real impact. And Callum is a very good driver coach. He runs the Gold Track Driving Club, as it were, for his weekday job. Spends a lot of time on track, BRDC member, former British GT champion.
And hot from last weekend, winning in the E-Type with Julian. And
right.
also, did he win? I'm not sure, but he raced a March 717 Can-Am car last weekend as well. 2
At
races.
Silverstone.
I think he might have won 3 races actually.
That's
last weekend.
Yeah,
Callum. And always a great interview.
Yes.
You can always get plenty out of Callum Lucky, I can tell you that.
And that Dave Coyne then is now up to 4th in the white Mustang with the stripes on it.
He's a boy to watch. Checkered career, really, Coyne. I mean, not the physique of a lot of the people he raced against, being polite, and you know, always a big character. As I said,
he was hot in Ford 2000, wasn't he?
Yeah, was quick in Formula 3000 as well, you know, Dave Coyne. But he was one of those. He was a nearly man. But it's great, and he went away from racing for a while, and then he came back on the short ovals, and then back into historic car racing.
He did those short ovals, did he?
I hope to get an interview with him, but we just missed him, unfortunately. We'll catch up with him maybe at the next broadcast. But and that's one of the great things about this historic racing. We've got all kinds of different drivers, some with great racing histories, some young kids that we've seen like Salusa going so well today.
Yeah.
And then some guys that just, you know, gentlemen drivers, but a lot of them, you know, with huge skill sets.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, and I think that's what always impresses the young professional drivers of the day, isn't it? They jump into one of these cars and think, well, I'll be able to beat all these fat old blokes, and it doesn't often turn out like that.
The Soperman, of course, long career as a factory driver, mainly for BMW. He won the Japanese Touring Car Championship one year. All of the flames coming out of the back of that Mustang. A bit of fuel there. And it looks like number 4, but it's number 74.
Excuse me,
Coyne.
yes. Yeah.
And Coyne might not be. I think he might be about to mount a challenge, hadn't he, on the Fen Hill car. I noticed because by us, Lockie Thomas car moved past the Fen Hill car.
Yes.
And we'll see what happens when the driver switches.
Yes, so this is, just as a reminder, a wonderful scrap happening at the front at the moment.
Yeah.
But we have to remember it is an endurance race.
Yep.
And as touring car racing could be in its day, and all pre-66 cars, and there will be a pit window.
We got the move then, and Coyne going for it. Goes down the inside.
Oh.
Coyne not quite able to get past.
Not quite.
Rob Fenn, we think it is in that car.
So the pit window will be between 20 and 40 minutes of this 1 hour race. Have to do the driver change. It's not how fast you can do it, just for safety reasons and make sure everybody's properly belted in and everything else. It's a 1 minute stop.
Now, I wonder why that Coyne car is showing so much flame. So the other Mustangs are not doing that.
Yes,
are they overfueling it a bit?
I think probably the answer is the preparer would rather you didn't ask that question.
Yeah. Well, there it is for all to see on the screen.
Yeah, that's right. So who is the first of the Cortinas then?
That's a good question. Yeah, Sumter is
I think it is Mark Sumter, isn't it?
Yeah.
In car 77.
Yeah.
I think has got himself just clear of the mad squabbling battle of Cortinas that is a little further down the grid, because the V8 cars first, second, third, fourth and fifth.
Oh, the hang of the tail out there. Mark Sumter got a good racing background, won the Silverstone 24 Hours, amongst other things, over the years, and raced Porsche 962s, and recently won a championship called the 2.0 litre Cup, which I think is just for Porsches.
Right.
He won that just a couple of years ago.
Oh yes, well indeed. I mean, that's a very nice little championship which runs in Europe very much, and everything is a pre-66 Porsche 911.
Right.
Can't be more than 2 litres. Oh, I just wondered if the Lockie car was looking a bit smoky there.
I'll say the Lockie put the...
That's definitely Soper.
Yeah.
Henry Mann is quick, but that's definitely a Soper style there.
Yeah, he had a BMW dealership, didn't he, for a while, Steve Soper?
Well, he did, of course, famously towards the end of his current career, drive BMW, the beautiful McLaren BMW factory car, in BMW factory colours, 97 in that GT World Championship, and then he drove the Williams-built open BMW V12 prototype.
They had a big shunt at, was it Road Atlanta or Sebring? Sebring.
Sebring, I
yeah,
think,
I saw that, yeah, Sebring.
And that would be 98, 99?
Yeah, and he really didn't...
He didn't come back after that for a long time. Yeah, that's right. But, I mean, he was sharing that car in 97. Steve Soper was sharing that car in 97 with JJ Leto.
Yeah.
And he was as quick as Leto, no trouble at all. Leto was fresh out of Grand Prix at the time, and at one stage had been the great Finnish star of the future, hadn't he? Soper is proper quick.
Yeah. When I first saw him racing, he was in a Fiat X19, which is a rather strange sports car. That's how he started, I think. Well, a nice shot there, working at the wheel, and...
do you know?
Yeah. Are you looking at the face?
I'm looking at the face, and I'm wondering, because it's being very, very aggressively driven, but you do have to remember it is a 1 hour race, and these tyres and all that horsepower. Of course, the thing is, Andrew, that these big American V8s in these touring cars at the time.
Lotus Cortina locking up there. Is that the first Mini? Just saying.
Yes, there we go. Yeah. And that is Nick Pabb. But the V8s in period were running about 340 brake. These cars are now running 440, 450 brake. And whereas the Cortinas have not been able to make that much of an increase. It is an elegant car. That's Paddy Shovlin there, and he's sharing the car with Michael Cullen.
Michael Cullen, one of the stars of Irish racing, and been very successful at Mondello Park. He's had a lot of victories at Mondello Park in the past, has Cullen.
Right. Yes, I've seen the name. I have made the connection.
Raced in the very successful actually in the Ferrari, challenge, the European series.
Yes.
For Ferraris.
Yes.
Whereas I think Shovlin also raced in that as well.
Well, it's great to see people diversifying a little bit and having that. Yes, that's right. That's where the name rings a bell from. Very quick in the European Ferrari Challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty car that, number 68. Michael Cullen and Paddy Shovlin from Ireland in the pale blue Lotus Cortina.
Interesting story about Cullen. He pretended to be Michael Schumacher for a Shell advert driving round Monaco. So Shell did a big TV commercial of Michael Schumacher driving around Monaco, and it was actually Cullen who was driving the car.
Wow, yes. Well, and there was, in that same famous Shell TV commercial for Ferrari and Shell, Rob Hall of Hall & Hall was playing the role of Jackie Ickx, driving the 312 1970 Grand Prix car. I want to say through the streets of Rome, I think that one was.
Right, yeah.
And there was also a sequence shot in the streets of Rio de Janeiro.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
very, very good
big
stuff.
budget film.
Yeah.
Now this is the Cortina battle we've got going on here at the moment. Lots of famous names in there. Richard Dutton has worked his way up, I see. Car number 9.
Just see that retired is the Ian Curley Solis, two big names for mini racing, or club mini racing. That car is in the pits, sadly.
Yes, here,
Bill
number
Solis,
46.
Bill Solis,
Bill Solis, I think that is.
It is, yeah.
And,
and Ian
how
Curley.
frustrating. That looks as though, and we have the 6 car. That's it. Soper's gone.
Out.
Yeah, and it was Henry.
It was Henry, yeah.
It was Henry.
Well, he was doing a great job.
He was doing a fantastic job. I can see the Masters team down there in the pit lane, but that is our lead driver, our lead car.
This isn't. Are we in the window?
No.
I just saw another Mustang come in.
We
I don't think we're in the window, are we?
We're not in the window.
No.
We're only 15 minutes into the race. No, that is, we've missed the. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we were following some of the other cars, and the great moment have the loss of the leader with an obvious mechanical problem.
The Fen Hill car is now in the lead with Dave Coyne second. The Thomas Lockie car is third, and then it's Tom Ingram and Marco Attard, and then Sumpter.
How come those two have got past the Thomas Lockie Black Falcon? The two Mustangs.
Stuff like this is going on all around the track. That's how. new fastest lap from the Lockie Thomas car, because it's dropped into the 48s, which no one else has thus far. In fact, second faster than anybody else.
Well,
anyway, a long way to go yet. So you go, and Alderslade driving with Andrew Jordan, Roy Alderslade. I mean, he's only done a couple of seasons of Ginetta racing, but he's certainly going quickly. Essex.
Here we go. Here we have the what is now the first three.
Yeah.
Absolutely nose to tail.
Yeah.
And with a Cortina in there as well.
What's that Cortina doing? That's Sumter, is it?
Well, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah. Wow, what a struggle, what a battle we have here at Brands Hatch. Final race of today.
Seagull ready.
Yeah, Seagull
happy to get out of the way, but for some reason, what should have been the leader inheriting the lead from the retired Steve Soper Henry Mann car has dropped back to third, and he's now. You're quite
another
right.
lock up there for the.
You're quite right.
Yeah, that is the.
Now is that Tom Ingram then?
Is that Tom Ingram?
I think that's Tom Ingram.
That is Tom Ingram. Yeah, that's what it is.
That is Tom Ingram, and he's now going to have a go. He's trying to have a go at the Falcon.
Yeah.
That is a very quick Cortina that has suddenly got himself up there. Very impressive drive indeed. And a big slip in a moment there by the Fens.
The Fen, yeah.
In
the lead, makes a big mistake.
Big mistake. Lost 100 metres just in a flash there. And so we now have Dave Coyne in the lead.
Yeah.
With
Not
Callum
for long.
Lockie. Whoa. And was it, I mean, obviously something happened in the traffic.
Well, Callum Lockie.
That got them.
I think, our timing score is showing Thomas at the wheel, but he is as quick as Lockie.
Yeah.
He is quick.
Julian Thomas got a bit. Look at the Cortina. I mean, I'm really impressed. Tom Ingram really giving it everything. And there's a proper racer's line, isn't it?
Yeah, and now they're going to start lapping some of the back markers. Should be fairly interesting, I would have thought.
And Fenn and Jake Hill are now going to try and catch up again. Whoa! He's actually got the Cortina into second place momentarily. That won't last on the pit straight, will it?
Wow, what a struggle, what a battle this is. These touring cars.
You're showing the wrong person the blue flag.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that was for the other. Whoa, straight back past.
Look at the power. That's American brute horsepower.
Lots of flaming exhaust. There's the man in the blue and gold Mustang is hoping against hope he's kept out of the way.
Yeah.
Tom Ingram flinging it up into the corner here.
And I suppose for newer motorsport fans, we should add that back in the day with those Lotus Cortinas, Jim Clark would come to a race meeting. He'd race in the Formula One race, which wouldn't be a Grand Prix, and then he'd probably drive the Lotus 30 as it gets really out of shape with the Lotus Cortina, and then he'd race the Lotus Cortina as well.
Yep.
About 3 or 4 races you might drive in a day.
Yes.
But it was always more spectacular Lotus Cortina than anything else, really.
It was a great wheel waver, wasn't it?
Yeah, great wheel waver.
Yes. Front wheel up in the air. Jim Clark could make everything and anything go fast. But it was a remarkable feature of the day that you could pay your money and quite often run a Formula 2 race as well as a Formula 1 race, a sports car race and a touring car race.
So John Whitmore, another quick guy in a Lotus Cortina. And a lot of the Lotus people, the Peter Arundels of this world, got to drive on occasion.
And indeed a Lotus driver, a Formula 1 driver of that period, who was racing in Masters with his saloon car until very recently when he decided he really was retired, was Jackie Oliver, Le Mans winner. And he just, like Steve Soper was saying in that interview you did with him, just couldn't give it up. He just absolutely loved it. But, you know, now Julian Thomas and Callum Lockie now have got the biggest lead we've seen. I mean, 100 yards or so.
Just put in a 1:48.064. That's the fastest lap thus far in this race.
And Pole had been with Steve Soper's lap 1:46.5. So I think the track is probably.
Yeah, the Studebakers in the pits, and that's a disappointment. We thought that car might be featuring in this battle, but wasn't to be today.
Yes, Adrian Wilmot finding that still a few bugs to shake out of that car, perhaps.
Yeah, out of the way, mate.
Yes.
That's the 88 car there.
Yeah, that's Smithies, I think, isn't it? No, that's Martin Melling at the moment.
Melling, yeah.
That's the car that will be driven either later in this race or tomorrow by Jason Minshaw, yes indeed. And Martin Melling enjoys his racing, but not, as he would say, not World Championship material. But I think he just managed to keep out of the way, didn't he?
He did, only just though.
Only just.
And Richard Dutton just moved up to 3rd place, the Fortec team owner. And
the 3rd place in his class, yeah?
Yeah.
In the Cortina class, if you like.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, this is a proper battle at the front, isn't it? Fantastic stuff. And you, hats off to Tom Ingram in the number 4 car there. I mean, he's actually taken.
How did he do that?
Beautiful. How did he manage? He drifted round the outside and into Sterling's, completely sideways on. That's wonderful car control. Wonderful car control. And it really rather proves, doesn't it, that what looks sometimes from the outside in BTCC, modern racing, as though it's all bump and bash in level pegging cars, these guys know how to drive. And that, look, I mean, he's drawn out a 100-metre lead straight away. And now the American V8s are going to come,
well, this time they didn't have quite another lock up there from the front.
Front and rear, quite stylish.
So,
I mean, look at this. This is proper stuff. They dropped down a little bit, maybe, the red car after that terrible mistake. But Fenn and what will be Jake Hill caught up again. Everybody is getting a little bit sideways now. I'm not sure if there's any oil down on the track or whether it's just that. It's just the heat of the day, and the tyres are beginning to. If there is to be a pit stop and anyone needs to do something, we are now inside what I'm
in the window
sure
now,
is the pit window. 36 minutes to run.
I guess the drivers who've got the pros in alongside them will probably come in early, won't they? They won't probably split the race half and half.
Yeah, I think if you're an owner and you've got to put someone quick into the car, but you must admit at the front, clearly the decision was to put the quick man in. Tom Ingram is sharing the car with Marco Attard.
And he'll probably take it the full 40 minutes to the window, to the end of the window, won't he, I would think.
I would imagine.
Oh, dear.
No, this is spectacular stuff, and we do hope you're enjoying it. Some wonderful camera work too. Brands Hatch has never looked greener in my
it
view.
hasn't, no. Just to say that, because Coyne is going the whole distance. So,
he's doing the whole thing with no change, isn't he?
So
he certainly knows he's in a race, doesn't he?
He certainly does. There, the great shot there of the Fenn Hill car. And of course, Fenn and Hill, Fenn owns the cars. Well, their father, I believe, owned the cars. They've got a lovely Lotus Elan they raced as well, which Jake Hill had a marvellous victory at Silverstone in 2 or 3 years ago. They've got Minis hard at it.
That's the 33 car there is being, that's the Page family, Jonathan and Matthew Page, in their very nice pale green car. And 155 is Nathan Heathcote in his car. That's the car number 155. Both Morrises. It was always hard to tell the difference between a Morris Mini Cooper and an Austin Mini Cooper, wasn't it?
And then you had the odd people racing the ones with the boot on the back, the Riley Elves.
The Riley Elf.
The Wolsey Hornets.
Yes.
Remember our broadcasting friend Mark Cole? He raced, I think, a Riley Elf.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, there they are. Those two, the Page brothers and Heathcote, are running 16th and 17th overall, and in their mini class, they are second and third only to the. I'm looking for our mini leader.
Now, what we should mention look who's now moved up to 11th from the back of the grid, Nigel Greensall.
Nigel Greensall from the back of the grid in car number 99.
Yeah.
And you'll see that car, Ford Mustang. That's a yellow Ford Mustang. Look out for a yellow Ford Mustang. Worked his way up through the field.
He's going to find it a bit more difficult now, though, because the people are lapping a similar speed.
Yeah, there it is.
Caught up, yeah.
Excellent pick up there by the camera crew.
Yeah, the yellow car.
The yellow Mustang there. And he's leading Martin, number 79, in another Lotus Cortina, as you can see.
The Spears Needell car has moved up. Well, where did that qualify? It's in 14th place now.
The Spears Needell car was down in 22nd place.
So that's
at the
a good.
start.
I presume that Tiff's at the wheel there.
So that's a very yellow, isn't it?
It's a very yellow, isn't it? That's bumblebee yellow, could we call it?
And so they're up.
We should be able to, if we should be able to see Tiff's crash helmet. It's quite distinctive, isn't it?
Yes, it is indeed. And I'm just trying to see where they're running. So he's in 14th place. I think Spears is at the wheel of that at the moment. And here we go. That's a saddening.
Yeah.
We can adjust that for you, chap. They're saying. But that's going to be a little hot in there.
Yep. Beautifully prepared, that car there, look.
That's Jonathan Lewis there.
Oh, Jonathan Lewis,
from very much the Snetterton man.
Yeah.
Jonathan used to run the Comtech race team.
Yeah, but Formula Renaults and all that.
And right up to the big Spanish, what do we call the Spanish Formula? Formula Nissan. What I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Formula Super Renault it became, didn't it? Now, we are in pit stops now, so everybody checking to make sure, marshals and the master's staff there, keeping an eye on everything, making sure that everyone does their proper pit stop, and all within the pit window. We're about halfway through the race now, 32 minutes to run, and so halfway through the pit stop window, which everybody must stop, even if they're driving solo. And not changing, I mean.
Lockie and Thomas pulled out 4.6 seconds now. After this tight battle we had at the front, suddenly the Thomas and Lockie car in the lead.
Yeah.
And
so, I mean, I think we should go back and see what is happening at the front of the field there with the Ingram Coyne Sumpter battle.
Julian Thomas, a very interesting man, big in the world of global GPS, and was also responsible for the drag reduction system in Formula 1 cars. He was the brains behind that.
Was it indeed, to make it work?
He's telling me these days there's more and more satellites up there, with global positioning. You're getting within 3 or 4 inches, centimetres, if you like, of being able to position people and know where they are. So, get a chip on your dog, you know where it is.
And here we are, talk of the devil, there's the man himself, and that now has got, what, a 4.5 second lead over the Tom Ingram Cortina.
It's the Fen Hill.
This looks to be just the pit stop. He's got to do his pit stop. Look, Gov, we're showing you the clock. Don't worry. We know when to let you out. A little bit of water dribbling out of the radiator at the front of the Mustang.
Yeah, well, that's a little bit worrying, isn't it? Mind you, I suppose it's in the pits. So that probably just a seep going on.
Of course, the other thing, Andrew, that's a feature, isn't it, of this historic racing is that the cars are so much more reliable now than they were.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
Everything used to break and stall and have a problem. He's still at it. I mean, he's really, really, really driving hard, isn't he?
I
Tom
think
Ingram.
Andrew Jordan's probably getting into the 72 car now. I've got to say, the 2 Irishmen, Cullen and Chauvelin doing really well up there in the top 10. They'll be pleased with that. Just nice to listen to the grunt of the V8s, isn't it, going through there, and then obviously the 4-cylinder engine in the Lotus Cortina.
I mean,
I had a Lotus Cortina, Chris, and
but it was just such a great plan by Ford, wasn't it, to go to Colin Chapman and say, make our cars sexy. We want to win saloon car races, but we also want to sell lots of them. And I mean, that's what everybody longed for, wasn't it? Was to have.
Pretty busy down in the pits now. Look.
Yes.
There's the 74. Just.
That's Dave.
Yeah. 70.
Coming out of the lead, he's got to be very patient now. Just behind him, a rare car nowadays in historic racing, that's Harry Mailer's BMW 1800 Ti, some way down the field.
They would have raced in period against these cars, but more in Europe, I think.
Absolutely. In Europe, you'd see more BMWs and Alfa Romeos, and indeed, when Masters runs more in Europe, Coyne is off and out again.
Yeah, those are incredible.
So just temporarily, the process has broken up a little bit. There is Coyne coming out of the pit right now.
So
and we're going to have to now wait and see how it all cycles through.
So Ingram is staying out. Lockie Sumter, the Balfe car, has moved up. That's in the pits. The Andrew Jordan Alderslade car is in the pits. The Taylor Greensall car, Page and Padmore, right up the field there in the pits in the Mini. So this has got to work its way out now, hasn't it?
Yes. The Coyne straight back on it again and past a couple of the other back markers, including the red Mustang there.
Well, I think this could be the excitement, because you're seeing Dave Coyne coming back up.
Well, that's him now, not far behind.
He's got to cycle through those pit stops, haven't it? Then we see where we are.
There's still 7 minutes left on the pit window.
Yeah, and they're leaving Ingram out, aren't they? But I don't know. Attard, a lot of success in the past in Ferrari racing, hasn't he? And other things, but he's not on the same pace as Ingram. Whereas Lockie and Thomas are quite well matched, I think. Sumter's obviously just driving himself.
There we go.
There we are. There's a 192.
Yeah.
So is that Callum at the wheel now? I think so.
Yes, I think so too. He's saying don't move, don't move.
There
now
he goes.
go.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so there you go. And so it is now Marco Attard is going to be in car number 4, I think.
And here's the big Falcon rumbling up the pit lane and blending into the track there at Paddock Hill Bend.
Nicely prepared car, isn't it? And there, indeed, there is Dave Coyne.
Who's fully up to speed, so he might be able to catch him up at Druids, hadn't he?
Well, not by going off like that. He got all excited there. Not the battle, but I think Sumter is now going to try and close in a little bit on Jake Hill. But Jake Hill will know exactly what needs to be done. Some wonderful camera work here, allowing us to see what it's really like to drive a historic touring car.
Well, what a spectacle this has turned out to be, hasn't it? With the Falcons, just so disappointed really to see the Soper car drop out.
Yes. But they did look as though they were going to disappear into the distance with it. So this has certainly leveled things up a little bit.
There's that 99 car again that's battled its way up through the field.
And this is Colin Sauter in the red Mustang, who we saw in the previous race. Colin was out there in the Endurance Legends.
I think Callum's still on it. Another fastest lap.
So you see, that's a great advert for someone enjoying historic racing. Colin Sauter there can race the touring car, but he's also got his GT3 Ferrari, which he had in the Endurance Legends. Mind you, he's probably feeling the heat a little bit now, isn't it? Having done them in consecutive runs. Actually, he's come from a long way back on the grid, you know, Andrew. Yeah, I mean, he was right at the back. He probably didn't have much time to get a lap in while he was doing everything else. The two minis enjoying themselves.
Jake Hill closing up a little bit. It took a little bit of time out to the Lockie car that lap. And I think he might get on terms again, you know, before the end of this. We've still got 17 minutes remaining. And Dave Coyne, he's had his period in the lead, didn't he? But now Dave Coyne has dropped back a fair way. He's 8 seconds off the lead. And the gap at the moment still quite handsome.
And Dutton is dropping down.
Yeah, Dutton's I think he must have a problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's probably not just frightened
out.
himself. I think he's had a problem.
Yeah.
And the mini battle is still still going strong.
Page car is in 12th place there. Yeah, I think Dutton, because he only dropped 1 place when he had the spin, didn't he? Now he's got 4 or 5.
Yes.
But got to be impressed by Roy Alderslade, assuming it is just him driving.
Yeah, I
think his 3rd season of racing, and in among some of the big names. And Sean Balfour's also moved up a bit. And here's
these guys
mini races
are really enjoying themselves.
Remember the days of John Rhodes and John Hanley and Fitzpatrick and all those people racing.
23, the Cortina in front of the 2 minis is being driven by Mark Owen, and Mark Owen also races a Chevron B8, and
got lots of lovely chevrons here this weekend. It was interesting that
nicely done, very nicely done.
In the day, people raced Ford Anglia successfully.
Yes.
They don't seem to.
No, but
is that the 66 bit?
No, it's not. It's the Anglias were never homologated by Ford to be FIA cars.
Oh, that's the reason.
And so lots of people would like to be. I like the man adjusting the mirror there, quite right.
Yeah.
In 155 there. In 155, that's Nathan Heathcote, and he's still going very well.
Yeah.
They were right up, further up the field at one stage, but now, obviously, after all the pit stops and so on, they've dropped back a little bit.
Lockie's just responded because the last lap, he took some time out of Jake. And Coyne's still in there. And also going very quickly, Sumpter actually is down in the low 150s, which is where you need to be. And I think probably the tyres are not quite the way they were when they started now, but these minis giving us some great action.
Andrew, look at that, wonderful stuff. 10-inch wheels on the minis.
Yeah.
So just to remind ourselves, that is the same as the front wheels on the Tyrrell six-wheeler we saw.
Yeah.
It really puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Just to say one of those minis got the number plate up to you. Well, it is up to the driver at the end of the day.
Quite right.
So still now the gap is 6 seconds, so Callum earning his money out there.
I've just heard from the pit lane, Andrew, that the reason for the Soper Henry Mann car retiring was no brakes. They just ran out of brakes and just had to stop. And the Ian Curley, Bill Solis car, which we saw in the pit lane earlier on, also no brakes. So
the mini high, wide and handsome was the great Brian Jones.
No, that is another tribute that we should not miss in this broadcast now. For those of you who don't know, a little earlier on this year, the great Brian Jones, long-time circuit commentator at Brands Hatch over the PA system, had died. He'd been ill for some time, but a great man, and there was a wonderful send-off he got, and there will be further tributes, but a real figure at Brands Hatch, and his great phrase was the one Andrew just used,
it was
high, wide and
handsome,
into paddock a little bit.
Yeah, but I did actually watch the funeral on which was a live feed.
Yes.
Obviously we would have gone in different days, but it was very moving.
It was very moving, great man, and a friend to everybody who came to race at Brands Hatch, and particularly a friend to everyone who trained at Brands Hatch in the famous old motor racing stables. And a great commentator. And the other thing Brian did so very well, Brian Jones, was to train drivers in how to speak to a microphone.
Yes, he did.
And a much missed figure at Brands Hatch.
Just to say that the last lap, the 166, the second place car, dropped a lot of time. And Coyne would have closed right up on him now when we get to see that. Well, there's still some to that.
Yes, I mean, I'm sure.
Eggshell blue, I would call that, white car.
So these two are hard at it, but that's the Paddy Shoveling car from Ireland, isn't it? Yes. But I think if we could get back to see the leaders again, we'll be able to see Lockie has just crossed the line to start the 25th lap, complete the 25th
and now
lap.
he's pulled away.
And he's pulling away a little bit.
Yeah.
But we want to see where, you're right, the Jake Hill Fenn car.
Must have a problem.
Here he is. Or the...
Is he running out of brakes? You see, that's... these cars.
There's the leader.
Yeah,
there's the leader coming out of mustn't call it bottom hill bend, and Graham Hill bend. Dave Coyne still in second place.
Sumpter third.
And Sumpter up to third in the elegant pale blue Cortina. And so now the red car has just dropped back a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Rob Fenn, who took over from Jake Hill.
Or was it the other way?
No, I think. Jake Hill took over from Rob Fenn, but it is slowing heavily now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he risks being caught by number 72, Roy Alderslade, in the Cortina, which is coming on up. Yeah, Mark Sumpter there, still pressing on very hard.
Yeah.
And you know, he's not been locking brakes and wearing the tyres too much, has he?
No.
I think he may have enough for a last-minute spurt.
So he's right on the back of Dave Coyne car.
10 minutes to go, just 10 minutes left in this 1 hour Masters pre-66 touring car race. At what remains a sunny Brands Hatch and a leafy springtime Brands Hatch. And we look forward to a great deal of Masters racing tomorrow. We've still got a little way to go in this race, lots of action all the way down through the field.
Yeah, Dave Coyne is car dealer in Basingstoke when he's not racing.
Oh, is he nowadays?
I mean, it's funny, you remember him, running the Formula 4, he's 63 years old now, he's still fast, isn't he?
Yeah, he's 63, is he indeed?
Yeah.
It is sad that under the present restrictions, big moment.
That was the Greenshill car. All the different lights are flashing in some sort of strange sequence.
Yeah, that's the number 99 car, and I think he probably gave himself a proper fright there.
Yeah.
Oh, look, he's right with him. He's right with him. Sumpter is right with Coyne.
Coyne's going to try and chop him off anyway. He doesn't. The grunt got him back in front, didn't it?
Yeah.
But I suspect he's struggling with the brakes. That's what I would think. It'll be interesting to see as they hurtled it down the long straight through Hawthorne Hill and into Hawthorne, so you might outbrake him there. If he's got brake problems, that's one of the places you could tell, because you're coming from a lot of sport. It didn't look like it, did it?
I'm really impressed by Sumpter and this car.
Yeah, through Westfield.
It's very nicely prepared.
Yeah.
And being very immaculately driven too. The Hill Rob Fenn car is still there or thereabouts, but now in 4th place.
Yeah.
Alderslade in 5th place, Sean Balfe in number 34 up to 6th, and then the Irishmen, Michael Cullen and Paddy Shovlin.
The Dubliners.
The Dubliners, maybe they'll play us a tune, up to 7th, and Tom Ingram's co-driver Marco Attard has dropped down a little bit in car number 4, and Nigel Greensill got the 9 car up into 9th place.
Yeah, I think Taylor at the wheel now.
And Richard Dutton, I will have to tease him about this afterwards. After that dramatic spin on the entrance, almost to the pit lane, dropped back from competing for the top podium positions down to 10th place.
And how are we doing with the minis?
And the minis, I think the minis overall still being led by the Page Padmore car, number 333, the red car, but not far behind them is Mark Owen. This time, and he's bogged himself down.
He's not coming out of there.
And if he's not coming out of
Coyne
there,
still side by side with Mark Sumpter.
But I tell you what, the race director is going to have a very close look at the fact there is someone beached there.
7 minutes to go.
I think they may decide everyone's had enough.
Well, this has been one of the classic battles of the day, hasn't it? Sumpter versus Dave Coyne.
It certainly has. And now, where is he in the gravel trap? At the Exeter Stirlings, I think, wasn't it?
So.
Which is where he came off last time.
Yeah, and he's not going to get it out of there.
No, he's not.
It's up to the...
Marshall's saying, get out of the car.
Hubcaps,
yes, well up to the hubcaps. He wants him out, come on. Whoa, that's exactly what we...
That was...
That's
that
why...
could have been terrible. That could have been absolutely terrible.
Please give credit to the boys in orange, the boys and girls in orange. The marshals in British racing do an extraordinary job as the leader comes past the Beach 99
I presume
car.
there'll be a bit of yellow waving before
And
then.
I'm waiting to see whether the race director is going to make a decision there, because that is quite a... Yep, safety car board's coming out, and with 6 minutes to go, and that car's going to have to be extracted from some pretty deep... Did you see the squirrel just saved his life there?
Yeah, I saw that squirrel.
He has to be the luckiest squirrel in Kent.
He does. I've done that before. Nothing to worry about.
Yeah, the ones you want to look out for is when it's a motorcycle race and a squirrel.
Yeah.
So car number 3 is being given Richard Dutton is being given a stop and go for a short pit stop. So this, I suspect, is probably going to be our winner. He's just got to keep going. 5 minutes on the clock, but we are under a safety car, and I think it's going to take a sufficiently long time to get the towing vehicle up to Stirling's in order to be able to get that car moved.
Do you know who prepares that car? Thomas Cars? Julian Thomas's car? So they certainly do a great job, don't they?
They do a fantastic job. Do you know, will find out for us, I don't know.
There's the BMW still
blowing
going.
a lot of smoke.
Yeah.
And well done, he's picked up...
Let's have a quick shout out, as they say, for Mark Hales, who's got that car up into 10th place with Ross Jones.
Yes, he has.
Yeah.
Nice job, incidentally, by the safety car driver, who has picked out the leader. The only trouble is Dave Coyne. Where's the second place man? There's Coyne as second place man, and Sumter. So he's probably all right. But as we saw in the Masters Endurance Legends, with a safety car out there, you are inclined to get that. Obviously, the field bunches up, and a last-minute surprise did rather undo.
Well, almost undid.
Almost undid
Steve Tandy's efforts.
Yes. Almost undid Steve Tandy's efforts, and for that matter, gave Lucas Salusa in the...
Wow, yeah, well, that was that fantastic overtake, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a fantastic overtake on the last corner.
That was a brave move, and congratulations for that.
Yes.
But, yeah, I suppose this is going to finish under the safety car, though we did a one-lap final dash, didn't we, earlier on?
Yes, I think if they possibly can, Masters, as a big professional organisation, takes their own race director around the world with them.
Yes, yes.
Richard Quingen Didier, who is Anglo-French, and has a French international clerk of the course ticket, is very experienced working with Masters. And as Ron was saying earlier on, Ron Maiden, the president of Masters, was saying earlier on, the whole thing's got to be fun as well. The racing's serious, but it's got to be fun. And if you can, you try not to stop a race, not to end a race under a safety car.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, not that we don't want everyone to be watching us, because they will be watching tomorrow, I'm sure, but it's a big weekend of international motorsport. Italian Grand Prix for Moto at Mugello.
Yeah.
No better circuit almost anywhere. I love it. And the Indy 500. And you and I have done enough Indy 500s together. And that's not a race you want to finish under yellow.
No, absolutely not. But often does, of course.
And while we're under safety car here at Brands Hatch, your thoughts on the front runners at IndyCar? It looks really tight for the 500, doesn't it?
Yeah, the young Dutch kid.
Yes.
Oh, he's a sensation.
Rinus VK.
VK, which is such a short version of his
Van
name.
Klimt, isn't it?
Yeah. He's got to be right there. A few Brits in the field, of course.
Yeah.
And one lady driver this year.
Simona de Silvestro.
She's starting at the back.
All-female run team.
Because this year they had a few more cars, so a couple of people never made the show.
Yeah.
They didn't make the 33.
Yeah.
And she just scraped in.
She just scraped in, but that's great that she's done.
With a team that's run by Beth Peretta, who used to be in charge of the Chrysler motorsport program at one stage.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yes, indeed. So, I mean, I think the Indy 500, that kicks off tomorrow, 11 o'clock Central USA time.
Scott Dixon is one of the best drivers never to get into Formula One.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a terrific competitor. He's a lovely
Absolutely.
guy as well.
But you know, I think there are some young boys out there in that
there are,
series
yeah.
now. Herter, much
Well,
being
Colton
talked about
Herter,
as
yeah,
possible bringing.
yeah.
I remember when he
Is
first.
he the other one on the front row? Colton Herter, I think so.
Yeah, he's on the front row. When he first arrived in Britain, he was at Donington Park, due to test a Formula 4 car.
Yes.
Not for Richard Dutton, but if it wasn't Fortec, it was Carling, whatever.
Yeah.
And someone pointed out that he was in fact still 13, and he'd have to wait a month before he was 14. Yeah.
But that felt like a long wait.
Yeah, it did.
They're just they're going to finish under the safety car here, aren't they? And congratulate Julian Thomas and Callum Lockie on doing an outstanding job. As I say, Lockie had 3 wins last weekend. He's got another one in the book today.
Yeah, there was a big HSCC meeting at Silverstone, wasn't there?
Yeah,
I'm afraid that is the problem. They only had the fast recovery vehicle to get that out.
Yeah.
And exactly with 53 seconds left on it, I think they're going to stick the checker out this time around.
I'm sure they will. And Dave Coyne hanging in second place, and
well done,
a podium for Mark Sumter in the Lotus Cortina.
It
Nice
certainly
drive
looks
from
that
him.
way. There are the Minis and the BMWs in the second part of the Crocodile. I'm not sure if they're going to show the checkered flag here. We better just look to see. I know.
Are they going to trundle
They're
around?
going to trundle around one more lap. That's a shame.
Yeah.
But an hour's an hour, and they're getting their hour on track. So there's.
Well, it's not as if there's a light, but we're almost close to the longest day, aren't we?
No, don't say that. We haven't even started thinking about having any decent weather in Britain.
I know.
I don't know, wherever you may be listening and watching around the world for this Masters Historic Festival from Brands Hatch, Andrew Marriott and Christopher Tate, we can tell you that Britain has had one of its worst ever springs for rain and storms and cloudy days. This is almost the best day we've had so far. Since about February, isn't it?
Did I read that in Devon it rained every day of the month, and yet the month before there was no rain, but it was just horribly cold all the time.
Unbelievably cold. Fantastic, a great run. Another one of the minis with Steve Jones there in his mini.
16th place, but
we'd not seen him racing so much, but he'd done very well.
I think he's got a podium in the class, hasn't he?
Come up through the field in quite a big way.
Yeah.
But he was right towards the back. He's come up from 28th to 16th.
Yeah, but the star, of course, has been Padmore and Page with the 333 car up in 11th place overall in that mini.
In the red mini, I mean, really extraordinary. But of course, that's how it was in the day. Do we remember John Rhodes and John Handley in the factory Coopers? Painted the same way as the Cooper Grand Prix cars, in green with 2 white stripes down the bonnet. Yes, so I think we are trundling round to a checker flag. I think I did just see a famous red helmet in a car, didn't I, Tiff?
Yeah, did you? He's
and there, I'm afraid, is the miscreant who caused that.
So he's been dragged back on the track.
Now, Nigel Greensall is the sort of driver coach and co-driver in that car. Alex Taylor, we're not sure who it was who dropped it after the pit stops, but anyway, we are now where we are, and Callum Lockie and Julian Thomas will bring their Falcon back across the line.
Well, disappointed for Fenton Hill, of course. But, well, a race of several different leaders.
And, lots of excitement.
Great battles and sideways motoring, and Lotus Cortinas more or less waving wheels in the air.
Yeah.
And here they come down.
And I think this will be to
towards
the
checkered flag. Yellow flags waving there.
I'll tell you, one person who will have been extremely pleased to see how everybody was wearing their tyres out in this race today will be John Pearson of HP Tyres. That is the checkered flag, as we suspected. John Pearson of HP Tyres, who's the big supplier of Dunlop historic race tyres. So sadly, ladies and gentlemen, it did have to finish, I'm afraid, under a yellow flag with the safety car conditions. But we have seen some great racing in this Masters Pre-66 touring cars, and we will wait for the definitive results. But it certainly has been a convincing victory for Julian Thomas and Callum Lockie in this black Ford Falcon.
I think that's Callum, isn't it?
Yeah, and now they can shuffle themselves into a finishing order if they like, because they are no longer under the safety car's control.
Full day's racing tomorrow, because a little bit of practice still, but it's mainly racing all day long, isn't it? And I think you've got the timetable there. It's probably just worth
yes, it certainly
telling
is.
us what we've got.
Yes, they are all going back into
quite an early start as well, I think.
Yes, we very much look forward to you joining us tomorrow morning. We'll be on air again at around 9:45 tomorrow with the first race for gentlemen drivers, which is the Pre-66, equivalent to these saloon cars, but the GT cars. And that is a wonderful mix with everything from Ferrari GTO to Daytona Cobras, E-types, all manner of wonderful GT cars, class battles all the way down through the grid. That is an endurance race with pit stops. And
but
let's
just confirm the result here, with Thomas and Lockie winning in the Falcon over the Dave Coyne Mustang. Roy Alderslade shown third in the Lotus Cortina. A lot of Lotus Cortinas. Balfe Ashton fourth, Attard and Ingram. Tom Ingram doing a great job. Fifth, Richard Dutton sixth, despite that lurid spin. Mark Martin in seventh. Then the Mark Hales Ross Jones Lotus Cortina. And then all the way up to ninth, the Page Padmore Mini Cooper. And then the man himself, Tiffany Dell and John Spears, there in 10th place. 11th, the Irishman, Chauvelin and Cullen in their Cortina. Mark Sumter in 12th place, having run right at the front. Owen and Dunham, and then Nathan Heathcote in the second of the Mini Coopers. The two Page brothers in 15th place. Steve Jones 16th, Clarkson and Smithies in 17th in their Falcon. And then that BMW from Henry Mailer, Streak and Streak, the brothers in Lotus Cortina, and then Melling and Minshaw in a Falcon 2 laps down, and then Glover and Green, Taylor and Greensaw, the one that got beached. Fenn and Hill ran at the front and led. Hall and Osborne, Salter, the second of the BMWs. Wilmot and Farmer didn't go far in the Studebaker Lark Daytona. Soper and Mann, we expected to be the front runners. Early problem, no brakes. Naismith brothers, I suppose they're brothers. And then the Curly Solid Start Mini was the first of the retirements. But what a race it was.
What a race it was. And so we can look forward tomorrow to the gentleman drivers to begin with. We will show you some of the Masters single-seaters, all sorts of eras, including a very nice Benetton, which will do some demonstration laps. The qualifying for the Minis, then the Masters Historic Sports Cars, a 1-hour race, and those are wonderful cars, the big Lolas, the Chevrons, you name it. And after lunch, when the Minis get their race, 20 minutes of Mini madness, that'll be. And then the second round of the Masters Historic Formula One, which, if it's anything like today, should be a
lots
great
of McLarens
spectacle.
at the front of that.
Lots of McLarens. The second running out for the Equipe Libre, the nice GT cars, the British National Series invitation race, and they put on a nice show today. And then the second Masters Endurance Legends, and to top off the day, Sunday, tomorrow the 30th of May, here at Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit, will be a race all for the Minis by themselves, which should be great fun.
Well, I think time, Chris, for us to say good evening to everyone. Thanks for joining us here on the live feed. Some terrific racing from the Masters Historic Festival. I expect much more again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, and have a good evening.
Thanks very much, and good night. We'll speak to you and hear from you.